But I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But I think given that we're not voting on right now, we can kind of keep the ball rolling. Thank you for hitting that record button, Ebenezer. So I'm going to start off with our chair report.
I will be adding 5 minutes to the clock.
Thank you. I hopefully won't take too much of that. All right. So to start, in terms of office and personnel matters, we've been making some really big advancements. They feel like crazy small, but they're actually huge in terms of improving workflows and task ownership at the office. I'm not going to steal Ebenezer's thunder, so I'll let him report on some of those items later on. I'll move on to the Friday, the 24th. So we're hopefully folks who are on this call will be present and many more. So one thank for folks who signed up to the host committee. The host committee consists of Liz, Jacob Banis, Francisco, and Domingo. And they'll be organizing this one. If you want to tap on to one that is specific to your niche area of the district, feel free to reach out to them. But yeah, so Friday the 24th, we are at Chelas from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I think, this is a really great opportunity for us to, not only connect as board members, but also bring in people who regularly attend our meetings or who have raised questions about what the community board is. Maybe they're regulars at our meetings, but haven't necessarily been involved in a formal way. And I think that this is a great space for folks to connect. And then last and certainly not least, given that the timing worked really well, given that the board reapplication and board application portal is open for us to be able to tap into the voices that we desperately need on our board. So, for example, architects and hospitality workers and more small folks from the small business space, just to name a few. So, definitely it's on the, e-blast. It was also on the newsletter. Text the flyer, post on your social media along with the link. It is a free event. So it's a Friday night, so why not? And hopefully we'll have good weather and really a quality over quantity turnout. It's the first of what we hope to be 4, I think, of this year as we move across the district. So for folks who live in the 150s, this is a great chance. And then last on my list is around Borough Board. I attended the Borough Board last week and very briefly the District Service Cabinet meeting. I will say we got a presentation actually from the Independent Redistricting Commission around the state lines. Fascinating, and I'm waiting for them to forward the deck to be able to share that widely. I believe we're in a public comment period around state redistricting. For folks who may not be aware, those Senate Assembly lines are back in, I think, arbitration is how I understood it. So they're asking for the public to be able to weigh in. So I'll share that widely. We voted on the borough budget priorities, which is essentially the compilation of all of the Manhattan borough boards, but budget priorities. And so that was a draft document waiting for the final doc. I'm sure MBPO will send that out widely and also include that as well. And we could probably add it to our website. I think that would be great to have. And then in terms of requests here, again, any special projects I would ask for committee chairs, specifically for when I do attend the borough board. If there's something specifically you would like for me to report back on, it would be great to get that by the end of the second week so I can send out just an email reminder. Some things I know in terms of the big projects, others are harder to kind of keep track of because there's so much happening at the same time. And then newsletters. So for our next edition of the newsletter, as you saw, Jumina is receiving all of the shout outs. So if folks do have a shout outs that they would like to include, feel free to send them to her. I'll also announce that at the general meeting, as well as any special segments that you would like to report on in the next edition of the newsletter. Working on the timing of of that. And so hopefully I'll have kind of like a, by this date, send this by the general. That's it. Marielle?
You'll get 2 minutes, Marielle.
Yep. Thank you, Kathy, for your update. I've asked several times before. I am not receiving the newsletters. If staff could please make sure that my email is included, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have them follow up again individually because I did get a list of how they edited and added yours and other folks. So I think we might have to schedule one-on-ones between office staff and folks who still aren't receiving it to figure out what the issue is. Liz?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I just want to say this is the most comprehensive report we've received on a borough board meeting in a very long time. And it's nice to have information flowing back down and know that there's a path for information flowing up. That just strikes me as astonishingly functional. So thank you.
Not a problem. It's a new meeting for me and I'm still kind of gauging how it works in terms of the borough board. So, I'll definitely keep updating as much as possible. And the timing also does conflict with the district service cabinet meeting. So I wish they would change them, but it is what
We
it
will
is.
figure that out, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, and how to split those responsibilities a little bit.
Yeah. Yes,
If I may-
thank you,
if I may
Angel. There we
be-
go.
If I may be so bold as to suggest, since it does conflict and I feel like there's a probability of 0 that that's going to change, that you switch it up and alternate, because borough board's really important and DSC is really important. Just
Yeah, huge shout out there. Cool. All right, and I'll pass it off then to Ebenezer for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Always a pleasure being here as your district manager. Maria, I would like to ask you before I do my report. You said that you are not receiving the newsletter, but do you receive the other announcements that we sent out?
It seems like I'm only receiving some. So there have been instances where other members of the board have forwarded things to me that I did not receive. And so I'm not sure what's going on. And I'll check my spam folder just in case.
Yes, please
But,
let us know. Let us know, because we updated and everyone is listed. And this newsletter only goes to board members. Okay, so going straight to my report, like following all what our Madam Chair said, we have been working very actively in the office to activate a general inbox, and we're planning to change the way that we receive emails in the office going forward. We're going to request that the general public, the agencies, and any complaint that comes out go to this one inbox that's going to be checked several times a day. The general inbox that was created for us a few years ago was reactivated, and we are planning to reopen by the end of the month. However, we are testing to make sure that each computer of the staff has this inbox, general inbox, because it was put on my computer and now it's not there. So we're tweaking a few things, but the plan is that we're going to launch it by the end of this month. Also, we have been working on the direction of our chairperson to create the sharing point. So it's a special, it's like a online server that everyone in the office and the chair of the board may have access to all the documents that we create. However, we are having some technical difficulty with OTI, and tomorrow we have a meeting with one of the technicians to activate or help us to activate this sharing point. We were told that we only have 2 licenses and we all operate with license, but we need 4 licenses. So we are in the process of clarifying this matter. Also, we had a meeting this month, and we discussed how we're going to be notifying the committee meetings notification to the public, because we have some conflicts with questions with some committee chairs, or my notification doesn't go out, by somebody else notification goes out, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a requirement that we have, is to send the notification with your agenda. Sometimes it goes out with the agenda, but just to give notification. But we want to have a consensus for each one of you here at the executive committee. How often should we send out the committee notification? We suggest that 4 times altogether. It's like a one time the week before the meeting with your agenda, and then 3 times before your meeting. And we would like to have some kind of agreement on this one. And I open the communication here, and then to have an agreement how we're going to do it, because we don't feel like anyone feel that we are not paying attention to you meeting, that we are not paying attention, and somebody have favorite meeting, et cetera, et cetera. It happens that the work is divided through the staff, and if we don't have your agenda items, so we cannot send that. Somebody else, so people wait for your agenda item, while another person may not wait for your agenda item and send just a plain notification. And also, I would like to raise the consideration, maybe to have a resolution to the Board of President of City Hall on the language of flyers that we send out from city agencies and elected officials. Sometimes we have this language that is not that clear, and the office need to create the language for a flyer that come from outside, and it's a little complicated, because anything that we send out from the office, we get responsible for that. And even though it says very clear, if it's an event, call this number or register with this on this link, people are still calling the office for clarification, or please sign me in on this matter. So it's probably, we need to get together what type of flyers, what type of language. And also we want that the flyers that go out of the office, especially those who are offering a service or event coming from city agency, be in both languages, in English and in Spanish. Early this month, a resident from the community called me, Ebenezer, we had, it's time, I have a lot of things to report here.
How about because you gave a lot of information and asks from committee chairs, let's have them respond to that. And then given that next week you're going to give out your full DM report around like services in the district, maybe let's pick like a top line from there. Liz.
You have 2 minutes, Liz. You're on.
In terms of notification of meetings, I think we do need to have more than one notice, but I think 4 might be excessive, particularly since there's so many meetings. So I would suggest 3, 1 the week before with the agenda, assuming we have it, 1 the day of with the agenda, assuming we have it, and when exactly the second one goes out, if it's the day before or 2 days before, I don't really have strong feelings. I defer to the consensus of the other committee chairs, but I think the week before, a day or 2 before, and that morning is probably a good mix of frequency, because people just need to be nudged without like really overwhelming folks. I would also suggest that in the event that an agenda has changed, I imagine that you're programming in advance, like you have this email and it should go out on this day, that day, and the other day. But if new information comes in, either an agenda where there was none or a corrected agenda, to please, please, please revise the outgoing email so that the most current information goes out. The second thing is in terms of publicizing community events, it's a tough balance. I mean, yes, people don't pay attention. And so if they get an email, even if it's just a forward of some other organization or elected official, yep, unfortunately, people are going to call and ask you for the details if it's not clear. So I would suggest making sure that we're only sharing flyers that have complete information. If people say, hey, share my flyer, if it doesn't have complete information, the answer is no, please provide this information and then we'll share it.
Thank you. That's all. Sorry.
Okay, so we got 3. Marielle?
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, just wanted to echo Liz's point. I agree on the cadence of emails. I think 3 sounds about right. 1 a week before, the second one like 2 or 3 days before the meeting, and then 1 day of. But I also wanted to acknowledge OC's point in the chat, which I think is a good one. Okay, it looks like Kathy sees it here, which is, just if possible, Ebenezer, if you're able to maybe send out an email, just the bullet points of, the things that you're working on, acknowledging that obviously you're working on quite a bit. And so I think that would also be quite helpful. My other point is more so regarding, and I'm glad to see that these processes are being put in place. And a lot is happening at the moment, but is there some thought process about how do we reach community members that are not on email? So there are many of us who have emails, yes, and sometimes we get overwhelmed and sometimes we don't read them, but let's also be cognizant of many of our community members who may not use email. What ways are we using to reach out to them and encourage them to participate on these, various platforms? So for instance, Zoom, you have the call-in number and things like that. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We're going to take that into consideration. I think you have another call, another raise.
Yeah, yes, sir.
2 minutes have started.
Yeah, Angeli, that I don't say a whole lot. I think, and I love using Michelle Lee's experience while we were trying to get the neighbors' input on that resolution to increase an extra day or change the hours on a development site. I think that we ought to have some sort of responsibility and own up to it as to our outreach. I understand that we are duly appointed and we may or may not have individuals, a wider spectrum of outreach, but I think it's worth a try. It's worth at least, letting our neighbors know and letting the people that we know, our own little network of people, of close people, know that we're here. You just can't just leave it all up to the limitations and the constraints of an office. I think that if we were duly elected and appointed, then we should, and I suggest that we reach out on our own. I think that is for the benefit of the organization and the institution.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Ebenezer.
Now, finally, I want to remind the chairs that please submit your agenda items by tomorrow. This month, the calendar has to go out this Friday, the 24th, because if you notice, we're going to have the first meeting on March, the day after our general meeting. And the notification, I need to send it out by this Friday. Please send me your agenda items, minutes, and resolutions. This week is very short for us. We have a holiday yesterday, and we need to prepare for the meeting on next Tuesday. This is the end of my report, and I will give you a better report or more complete report at the general meeting. Thank you. God bless you all. And Madam Chair, don't forget me, please. Don't forget my request to consider my request for merit raise. Thank you.
Yeah, I got you. Also, I know I had included it early last month about that. One of the things as part of like office update was meeting with MBPO staff. And so that's an area that we had flagged, I think about a year ago, that we need more guidance and clarification on related to both, I think, the oversight of the staff and the role of the board, along with, salaries and union and yada, yada. So that is a TBD, waiting for a meeting scheduled with them, and potentially something broader because we're not the only board that is raising those questions, not just in Manhattan, but the city. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Michelle for a treasury report.
Michelle, you have 5 minutes.
Can I get screen sharing enabled before my time starts? Sorry, Angel, I just realized
You're
I
good.
didn't have the ability to share. Okay, should be working. Let me find the right tab.
Okay.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can see
Yeah.
the screen.
Okay, perfect. Let me get started. I'm going to first walk through high level what this report is, how to read it. We're going to go line by line through each of these items. And then lastly, I have a couple of month over month changes that I just want to call out and bring to everyone's attention. So first, how do you read this report? Okay. So this report was pulled on the 21st of February, so it was pulled today. Thank you, Ebenezer, for getting the report sent over. And it basically covers the overall, budget of the community board office. And just to let you guys know, we are 64% through the fiscal year. So this is for the fiscal year starting from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. So we're 65% through the fiscal year. This budget is separated into 3 sections. It'll be the personnel total or personal total, which is all of the staff salaries. The second piece would be the other than personal, OTPS. That's sort of like the equipment that's used, the supplies. And then the last piece is the lease for the community board office. So those are the items that it's separated into. And then for each of these items, there's separate codes. Each of these codes is like a line item here. For example, full year positions separates into code 001. The budgeted amount is 232K, and the liquidated amount, which is the amount that has been spent so far, is 124K. That leaves us an uncommitted balance of 108K for the rest of the fiscal year. So that's high level how to read it.
Michelle, can I ask you? I'm having trouble.
She has 5. Oh, is it a technical issue?
Yeah, can this be made larger? I'm having trouble reading it.
Yes. Let me zoom in. Is this a little bit better? Steve, can you see it?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. Let's zoom out a little bit so you can see all of it. Thanks for your comment. So this is high level what's going on. And what you see here is the salary, the personal is separated into full year, unsalaried. Supper money is another one that we've talked about in the past meeting. OTPS is separated into supplies and material, printing supplies, postage, telecommunications, rentals, holding code, which has this 10K grant that has been provided to us by Carmen de la Rosa's office, as well as professional services and fixed charges. So as overall what you're seeing, the budgeted amount is the amount budgeted to that line item. The encumbered, pre-encumbered is money set aside, I believe, and the liquidated is the money spent. So the uncommitted is the budgeted minus the encumbered minus the liquidated. And this just is the grand total of everything. The budget for the office this fiscal year is 442K, and about 136K has been liquidated already. That leaves about 300K uncommitted. So that's the high level, and feel free to ask me more questions after. But I just wanted to call out a couple of month over month changes that I've seen looking at January's and February's. So there was no budget this month for OTPS code 684, which is professional services, and there was a budget of $1,000 last month. So that has been moved out of budget. However, OPTS code 700, the fixed charges code, that budget has actually increased in $1,000. That's something that I've noticed. The 10K grant is now in the budgeted column versus the holding code. So that seems ready to go. We also did get a note that it was earmarked for community safety and victim services, but we're waiting on Carmen de la Rosa's office for more clarification. And last month we talked about the projected surplus, right? So there was a projected surplus as of January 13th for code 412, the rentals, miscellaneous equipment, which is usually the copier, of about $9,000. And this surplus still seems pretty likely given that there hasn't been that much additional spend in February. And the board has talked about possible uses for this surplus, such as upgrading our Zoom account, type form license, CUNY license for land use, postcards, a consultant for mediation, training for online and hybrid facilitation. So those are kind of all on the board right now. And
so Michelle, very quickly.
Okay.
So you're up in time. I don't know if the chair wants to allot you more time. That's on her, but
sure.
just wanted to let you know that time is up.
Okay. Sorry, Michelle, I was going to say, wrap up the point. We have hands. Also, I know there are board members in the Q&A. That's something that you can raise your hand and ask verbally because things do need to be on the record. And since you can read it, Michelle, you can respond to it also on the record. But go ahead.
Yeah, just to wrap this up really quickly, Catherine, these are the possible uses that Catherine and the rest of the team have really brainstormed for how we might spend this surplus, which I'm sure people have questions on. And the other points here are just that there is a projected fiscal year surplus for personnel funds that can't be leveraged for board programming. And there are just like marginal increases in liquidated total amounts just from month to month. So those are most of my points. And I'll take questions. I'll just start with who I see. I see Daryl first.
Daryl, your 2 minutes start now.
Thank you, Michelle. Just regarding the surplus for copies, and kind of just for the record, but I just want to make sure that is because we are meeting virtually. Is that correct? And the office is not generating copies for in-person meetings. Is that the reason for this?
Yes, I believe so. And I also believe that this, the copier is for the lease. And Ebenezer mentioned that they've negotiated a slightly more favorable lease than in the past. So they've spent less money here than expected and originally budgeted for.
Great. And I would just echo that. I like your idea about, upgrading our Zoom and other technical stuff like that. Thank you.
Great. Let's go with Leo Jimenez.
Thank you for your detailed report, Michelle. It's the first time seeing it. It's very thorough. I have a question though. So I know in the past we've had translation services, and I can assume they used to fall under the budget called professional service. Now that it's been removed, does that budget move somewhere else? Are we gonna be utilizing that for our community members that don't speak English? How is that gonna work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to defer to Ebenezer on this one.
Yes, the funds that we had in professional services, I moved it to 700 code. That is the one that I use to pay the translation. The translation is still being used, and we pay. And I have a vendor that is more convenient for the board, because in the past we were using a company that was charging us a lot of money.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks. Let's go with Liz.
Liz, 2 minutes.
Thank you again for a extremely helpful and thorough report. I appreciate it. I have a question about outreach. Can we use some of our PS budget for paying a part-time like hourly person to just flyer up areas around where topics that are being discussed at meetings is happening? So, to flyer up around bars and restaurants that are subject to licensing, and to flyer up around, wherever committees that are discussing such and such park or this particular roadway or the 5G towers or what have you, that somebody's job is to go flyer those areas up, because I'm not sure that that's the best use of like Ebenezer's time at his salary. That's something that we can be paying somebody, $20 an hour. It's good. It's honorable work. It's good work, but it doesn't need to be at the level of salary of our other employees.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is a really great point. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna just say if I could take that one, because Angel did bring it up last month and we landed. That's also part of the personnel conversation that I'm waiting to have with MBPO, because it comes from a bucket that we don't necessarily maneuver ourselves. So hopefully by next month, I'll have a response to yes or no, or sooner than that, actually.
Great. Let's go with Angel.
I'll keep it short and sweet because my point is exactly what Liz just brought up. It's $44,000 that we're leaving at the table, on the table, that we are, we can use to put to good work. So we might as well make use of the money. Thanks.
Point taken. Let's go last. And I see Steve Simon.
Yeah, I want to second or third Liz's point. I also, I think, recommended last month that we utilize whatever additional monies we have to do a more extensive outreach. And I would not limit the person to just putting up flyers. I would want him to, to also contact people in local buildings, local community organizations, do a much more extensive outreach than on all of our issues. And not just putting up flyers, yes, but going beyond that and doing more outreach. And could I ask that that this chart be emailed to us, because I'm still having trouble reading it.
Yes, definitely. I can definitely make sure that it is sent to Ebenezer after we finalize any changes, if there are any, and then it gets sent out to the rest of the board.
All right, and I gather from what Ebenezer said earlier that we do have the money in the budget for translation services.
Yeah.
All right,
I believe so.
Yeah, and I wanted to just add to or last hand, I believe. Right now is really key in terms of, I know that we've been thinking, because our fiscal year ends in June, and so that means all projects have to be completed and expensed by the first week of June. But that doesn't necessarily deter us from, example, drafting requests for funding right now, so that next fiscal year we're in a much stronger, better position to make sure that we can scale up the projects that we want, right? And that can be whether it's on the outreach side, or as I mentioned before, if there are committee projects that folks want to take on, or whether that's kind of like programming or whatever that might be, like an event, then we're able to request additional funding and not wait until we have a surplus, since this is a budget for operations and not necessarily programming. All right. So I guess with that, we have some two things to follow up on around the personnel. And I think I hear loud and clear that's a big point for folks, or commonality in terms of expenditures, and of course Zoom, which we're working on. Oh, Barbara, before we go to the calendar.
Barbara, you have 2 minutes.
Barbara?
I need to stop this process in order for us to
let me mute her. She's on another call. Okay, Barbara. All right, I'll have her. I'll chat with her and see if what it was on. Where am I? Cool. So we're on to future meetings. So March and April, I can do a screen share because I know we do have some, I think not significant, but there's a lot of potential changes.
Significant.
Yeah. And my joint meeting peoples, I need to know what the decisions were. So can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Catherine, I got a little overlook. Could I make a brief comment?
Yeah, go ahead. You
Yeah,
run on
about the extra money and the surplus. I think one of the most best things that the community board did, we've done many good things, but one of the good things was when the issue of the homeless shelter came up and we held the community forum and brought in the community, and we forced the Manhattan Borough president and the city to make it a shelter for families and women and children, the one at about 178th Street. And we did that through a community forum venue. And of course that cost some money in terms of outreach and the venue we held it at and so forth. And I think if we could look at that model some more when issues come up.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a deterrent, even in the present. What it does, given the changes to open meeting law, require that they be hybrid.
We would do
and
both.
given to what we adopted. So it's hybrid. Yeah, there's no in person. It is in person and Zoom.
Hybrid.
Yeah, hybrid.
What we just did with the Parks Committee and the issue of the basketball court.
Exactly.
So if we see that we do more of those and renting venues and flyering and outreach into the community that way, those two modes, I think, constantly think that way. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Okay, so we should all be seeing March on the screen. I hope it's a good size. I know Debbie had the question around Purim and the committee meeting, and I don't know if because she's on vacation this week, so if she got the feedback she needed, Leo, or that's a TBD.
That's the TBD. As far as I know, we're having our meeting the first Monday, but she's also been MIA this week. She's had a couple of things to take care of, so I'll touch back with you. But as far as I know, we're still good for that first Monday.
Okay, Liz.
Yeah. So Purim is it's a great holiday, but it's not considered yontif. It's not a holiday where, according to religious law, you are prohibited from working. So for people who like to observe the holiday, typically they will observe the holiday both in the evening and in the morning. It is a holiday where you are obligated to get drunk, oddly enough. It's a fun holiday. So there may be people who decide they would rather go do that than attend a Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting. But unlike other Jewish observances, there's nothing about the holiday that conflicts with, you're not conflicting with a day when work is prohibited. And for people who want to observe the commandment of hearing that scripture read, they can do it in the evening or in the morning. Day drinking also encouraged. Where do you think?
Thanks. I always love seeing all the costumes around and people running. But okay, is there anyone that has a change? Mary, hold on, Barbara. Marielle.
Thanks, Kathy. Steve, I know we've been playing email tag. We do need to talk. But if we're still on to host the joint meeting with your committee, as I mentioned, I think we're fine to start at 6:30.
Yeah.
On March 2nd.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Marielle. I'll make a point of calling you tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. We'll talk then.
Okay,
Yes.
so y'all, tomorrow it is the 22nd. By Friday, the latest, the office needs to know, given all the prep work for the calendars and links and all that.
For sure. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So anyone else?
Yeah,
Any other committee chairs?
I think we need to confirm when the 34th Precinct Council will meet in March. We had them there seemed to be meeting on Thursday. They, for example, met on Thursday, February 23rd. So maybe Ebenezer can call and find out what their March date will be.
Okay. Any other committee chairs? March, going once, going twice. All right, we're gonna go on to April.
Oh, sorry, I did have one.
So you're not on here. Thank you. Then
Yes.
let's add y'all. What's the date for March?
Is it the 8th, I think? I think it's the second Wednesday.
Liz and Wayne, are those hands for March or for April?
Those went up. Those went up with April.
Okay.
April.
You did send the list, Daryl, so we're going to add it.
Okay, yeah, it's tricky
So-
because it's not for the public. It's for the board at this point.
Yeah, but I had sent an email about that because once it's up, and so we can connect offline in terms of how once the meeting starts, you address what the context and the purpose of the call is.
Got it.
So, all right, I'm gonna share April. We can start with folks who know they're gonna change.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, if I may, the rules of Passover, the first 2 days of Passover and the last 2 days of Passover are considered yontif, a holiday when work is prohibited. The intervening days, except for the intervening day if it's a Saturday, which is the Sabbath, but not an issue for us because we don't meet on Saturdays anyway. But the intervening days are Chol HaMoed. They're not holidays. They're part of the festival. We don't, in this case, eat bread and other foods, but work is not prohibited. So, and because the way the Jewish day works, it starts at sundown and it ends at sundown. It kind of bites both days since our meetings at this point are starting, 6:30, 7 o'clock. It's still considered the holiday. So it would be wildly inappropriate to have a meeting on Wednesday night, the 5th, or Thursday night, the 6th. So both of those are going to have to go. And the 12th and the 13th are the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 11th and the 12th are the 7th and 8th nights of Passover. So it would also be inappropriate to have meetings on the 11th or on the 12th. The 13th is difficult because the holiday doesn't technically end until 52 minutes after sundown. So if anybody wants to start a meeting at 8 o'clock, you could in theory do that, but I don't recommend it. So that does take a really big bite out of many of the available days. So I would suggest doubling up on the 3rd, the 4th, and the 10th. And related to that, LESR, the Public Safety Committee and Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee will be meeting jointly, and I would suggest doing it on the 18th. I know that's after the executive committee, but what are you going to do? I don't anticipate any resolutions. I think it's going to be a talking and discussing meeting.
I know there's a bunch of hands. Let's start with that one because it's a joint. Eliezer, the 18th. How does that sound?
No, I can't change it because I can't compromise the police precincts officers to show up. We can do it on the first of the. We can do parks on the first week of the month, but I can't. If I want the assistance of the both precincts, which I had a hard time getting them both at the same time. I want to stay consistent with the dates.
So the 4th?
Correct.
How does that sound, the 4th?
I'm not going to be available.
Okay, so you guys, can you chat and figure out while I keep moving on to other folks in terms of what changes we can make and figure out alternative dates?
Sounds good.
Okay, Wayne?
So I've already reached out to the land use committee members to inquire as to their availability to meet on Tuesday, the 4th, as opposed to Wednesday, the 5th, and that is probably what we're going to do. There will be an agenda item that was going to be for March, but there have been some changes, so it will not go to, in this case, the Board of Standards and Appeals until the 24th or 25th of April. And depending upon what happens, it may need to get to the executive committee. So, land use really can't meet much later, given, the tight time frame if we have to get a reso to the exec committee. So we're looking at the 4th.
Okay, I see Steve.
Yeah, Liz, I believe that on the 13th, the sunset should be maybe around 5:30, maybe a little earlier. Around, let's say it's around 5:30.
Let me check.
So wouldn't it be okay to then have a meeting? I was hoping I could have my meeting at 6:30 on the 13th.
Hold on a second. Let me.
Sunset's at 7:33. I checked. It's in the chat.
Well, I'm looking at something that says 5:30.
The 13th.
We'll be in
Okay.
daylight savings by then, so there's no way it could be at 5:30.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. I'm gonna keep going. Leo's next while we figure these things out. Leo, your traffic is actually pretty good, but go ahead.
So two things. Actually, it has to do with, so most members are into committees. If we bunch up for those days, then respecting Passover, what happens to quorum? And then my second question, is Debbie and I have spoken in the past of doing a joint meeting with public safety in regards to traffic enforcement. We get a lot of traffic enforcement complaints. So we were trying to have a traffic enforcement agent or someone come in and maybe do a joint meeting. So if possibly Liz cannot, work the details out with Eleazar, maybe we can kind of steal the joint meeting with public safety. Just a suggestion. Again, I would have to run it with Debbie.
Yeah, hit me up. We'll work it out.
Yeah, that's I'm like, you're a popular committee tonight. Okay, so there's that for the 3rd, because you guys are in good place. That is a great point in terms of conflicting committees.
Yeah,
I think this has happened in the past, and so you're ultimately excused. But if somebody can correct me from our veterans or parliamentarian, please let me know.
Can I speak to that scheduling piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that requiring public safety to sort of meet jointly twice with 2 different committees feels like an awful lot. If you don't mind, Eleazar, I may try and see if I can get some other representative from the PD to come to the Parks and Cultural Affairs meeting, but our main issue is in terms of enforcement is actually with the parks enforcement. So if you don't mind my reaching out directly to the 2 precincts to see if they have perhaps some staff who could attend a Parks and Cultural Affairs meeting, that frees you up to meet jointly with TNT at the beginning of the month at your preferred time.
That's good. As long as it makes sense and it's not challenging to anyone, yeah, we'll work it out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right, great. Mary?
I just wanted to clarify with Liz, if the aging committee on the 6th is okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay, then I have to consult.
It's 5th, 6th, 11th, and 12th. So let me go to licensing. I'm gonna go first to folks who are impacted. Licensing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for licensing is a little bit of a challenge because if we are to push over for the first Wednesday, that would be a problem because of the holiday. And if we push back to the 19th, that would be a really hard issue to write all the resolutions and the minutes. Liz, can the meeting be held after 7 perhaps? Would that be okay?
Well, you could have it on the third, so sunset is at 6:17. And, you know, the observant are going to not be able to meet until, it depends on what tradition you follow, but, you know, yes, if you want to have your meeting starting at 7, you could probably do that. To the extent that you have observant persons, which may or may not be an issue with some of your attorneys, they will be unlikely to attend, but I'm sure they will figure it out.
So Chair,
I want to speak. The 6th and the 7th are out. 6th is Holy
We're
Thursday.
talking,
The 7th
talking-
is Good
we're ta-
Friday.
Wait, we're talking
about-
the
we're
third
talking
week.
about the 13th. The 7 in that question is PM, not the
Oh,
day.
okay.
7
okay.
PM. I would
Okay.
say to be the most safe, I would suggest actually having it at like 7:30, but I know your meetings are extremely long as it is. But yeah.
so Chair, we can push the meeting on the 12th for 7th.
Okay, so licensing on the 13th at 7. Ebenezer, I'm also writing down. Business development, you're good, but go ahead, Joel.
I just want to see if we have Wayne and I have any overlapping members, but I guess we could connect offline about that.
Yeah, there'll definitely be some. Who am I missing? Okay, so land use, the 4th at 7. Public safety is TBD with Liz. If not,
Public safety is gonna go with TNT.
okay, so that's official. Okay, public safety, TNT on the 3rd. I know Debbie's on vacation this week, but again, like the staff, and Ebenezer, we can reiterate to all committee chairs by when we'll need that definitive schedule so that we can, actually, no, this is April, so we got a little time. Sorry.
What did we say? We got it again?
Who am I hearing right now? Oh, Barbara. Okay, aging is gonna get back. Health and environment is going to get back, and then Marielle. I knew I was missing somebody.
Yep. So let me consult with the other members of the committee and get back to you. And so just to be clear, so the 3rd and the 4th are possible, and then the 13th, if it's like after 7:35 or something, because sunset's at 7:33. Is that correct?
Yeah, the 10th is also fine.
The 10th is also okay. Okay, got it. I'll send something now.
At 7.
At 7, got it.
At 7:30,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
No, the 10th is, you can meet whenever you want. It's not a holiday.
Ah, okay.
Okay,
All right.
got it.
So
is
I would
safe.
move parks, and I'll plan to move parks to the 18th. I know it's
And parks.
after, it's after exec, but as I said, I don't anticipate that there's gonna be any rezos.
Okay. Ebenezer, do you need any of this repeated back?
No, I got all the changes. We have 3 committee pendings, I believe. Health,
Okay, and
housing is pending. And, you know, we got public safety to the 3rd. Parks gonna go to the 18th. Licensing gonna go to the 13th. So it's only 2 committees. No, well, no, aging as well. We're waiting for
bylaws.
aging.
and then Daryl.
Yeah. And I'll get back to you. I'll confer with the committee and let you know.
Daryl, and then I think Leo, your hand's still up.
No, forget it. I had a question. It was more of a suggestion. Is there any way maybe the executive committee meeting could move to that 19th Wednesday to allow Monday, Tuesday, 17th, 18th for any other committee that needs to meet? Or obviously that's your decision, Madam Chair, but it's a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not necessarily opposed. I don't know if in terms of staff coordination.
That makes it really hard because Ebenezer has the DSC
The
on
next
the
day.
20th. So to have the exec on Wednesday night, I don't want to speak for Ebenezer, but it won't surprise me if he hates that idea.
It doesn't matter to me because I can leave you in remote control on
That's
Wednesday in order to have my meeting on the 20th in the morning.
Yeah, okay. So let me get Steve, and then what we'll do is when folks give dates, if you do feel like you need to push to either that Monday, because exec could also be the 18th, then we can get there. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Liz, I'm a bit confused. Did you say earlier that the sunset on the 13th is around 6 or 6:30?
Like 6:21.
All right, because I Googled it and it says, and I think Daryl posted something that it said 7:33.
That was because the date that he had seemed like a different date, but when I was looking at where to go. I have a lot of screens open.
But as long as, if anything, folks can connect as you're resolving and double check daylight savings and what the options are. But again, just keep that as a flag, the 5th, the 6th, the 11th, and the 12th, and 7 p.m. on the 13th. Well, Good Friday you can work, so that's okay. All right. I think we're good to move forward, are we? Cool, let me go to my agenda. All right, so we're on to our working discussion related.
You guys are right, it's 7:43.
33.
7:33.
Yeah.
On the 13th.
Yeah, so you'd have
Yes.
you'd have to start your meeting a little bit later.
All right. So I'm going to look at the 19th or the 20th.
It'll be officially 3 minutes later.
So that
Oh,
means
where's my
Isidro, we would probably have to start at 8 o'clock, which is late, but
It's very late.
Okay. So we have a little time. We have about a month to figure this out. Definitely by the next exec, we have to be locked in so that the notices go in proper. And so I think, it's a drafting session. We'll keep playing it. And I think perhaps by the next exec, based on what people say, we can share a mock-up calendar based on what people have said. And if we need to move things, we move them. But we definitely know that that's going to conflict for some members. Mary, sorry, before I move forward.
Just FYI, because I'm going to be away on vacation starting next Tuesday, I may have a little trouble getting this organized because I already have a speaker booked as well.
For April?
So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then let's see what we can do.
Yosef is the assistant chair, so he will, this is going to be an issue.
Yeah.
But I may have to leave it for him to, finish coming up with a decision.
Yeah. Okay.
It's gonna be a little tricky.
Yeah, and thank you, Wayne, for the clarification, because I had also raised that we didn't put what day Good Friday or Holy Thursday, and then I know there's some Greek Orthodox dates in April, jam-packed with observances. So we'll figure it out. Cool. So if we can move forward, we're going to move on to our working discussion on I hate dubbing it the inclusion resolution, but until we can kind of gain consensus on how we're going to frame it, that's where we are. So I want to thank everyone for being present. And Tanya's going to give us some context, right? Because some folks here, it's completely new. For others, I've been there, been part of this conversation. Tanya, if you allow me, before you dive into the context presentation, I want to kind of not acknowledge a couple things. And it's that one, our discussions the last few months have been quite contentious. And we're hoping that moving forward, that's not the path. I recognize that some conversations for some people and for many can be difficult because they are hard conversations, and for some they may be really uncomfortable as well. And I think that's the moment for us, through these conversations that have become difficult, be the moment to actually work through and not necessarily check out. So, I think that we should welcome some of those hard moments, hard truths, to be able to create paths forward. I want to kind of start with what feels a little cliche, but I think it's part of a grounding opportunity for us, is that, one, I think, when we're speaking, let's try and speak from the I and how you see things, how I feel about things. And let's also assume positive intent. We're all board members, we're all present, and continue to be part of this body and value this body. And so I think that, we're all on different phases in terms of perspectives and values and beliefs. And so, being able to, one, be active listeners with each other and remind ourselves that, we're all here showing up. And it's not the end all be all, right? I know that this is a jam-packed agenda tonight. And so what I think that I would like, I think as a moderator for the meeting, actively listen to what are the steps and of actions, questions, reflection points that we can continue to work through, because we know this is long, hard work, and it doesn't happen in one meeting. It won't happen in a day, and it takes time. So, I definitely want to be able to set that up in terms of, how can we as a body set forth, these transformations that are critical, that are also inspiring, that can, also set precedent, I think, for boards. So I wanted to offer that there, lead that there, in terms of being able to ground them. And then I will take it away for Tanya in terms of context and what we're here.
I need to be able to share a screen.
Okay.
And what
I
you
don't
give
know why Zoom-
Tanya that capacity. Can you remind me again for the time limit?
Yeah,
on-
so I wanted a couple things. Sorry, and I forgot. Why can't I?
Yeah, we talked about, I needed 10. But
No, I know, no. I'm not, it's not about that. Sorry, I'm talking about broadly speaking. I had put more or less about 45 minutes to be able to have, everybody takes their turn as we do for parliamentary procedure, right? So 2 minutes after the presentation. And I also just want to acknowledge we may dive into territory that we want to kind of get into that requires us to be in executive session. I'm going to listen, but I'm also going to ask our parliamentarian to listen acutely. I would like to avoid having to go into executive session. So if there are some things that we feel like require that, then perhaps we can plan in the next month specifically to go into executive session. So I just want to offer that. And I don't know why I can't
If
allow
I could just comment, I think that and it may not be possible, but I think insofar as we speak about issues and not individuals, then we can avoid executive session. And again, I'm not going to weigh in on any opinion either, but ultimately, I think it's the principles and such that are going to need to be worked on. Thank you.
Okay, Tanya, can you try now?
Sure. I just so we are clear, it's going to be very difficult to talk about the inclusion resolution that has names in it and has people in it. It's still disabled.
Oh, here.
So the names are already there.
Yeah, the names are part of the public. That's fine. I think we're talking more about
Right.
beyond what was already on the page.
No.
Does it work now?
Let me see. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Tanya, let me know when you're ready and I'll start the time when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to say this presentation is intended to give everybody history and context about this important resolution, known by shorthand as the inclusion resolution, but its official title, it does have one, is the resolution of commitment and accountability in creating an environment that encourages and supports greater diversity, inclusion, and collegiality. I also want to express it's been a long 3 years since we passed this. And so, there is definitely appreciation for finally being able to get to a point where this can actually be discussed and hopefully some commitments made to move it forward. I would like to first acknowledge the contribution of board members past and present who contributed and championed this resolution. who worked with me in crafting and informing it, and who understood the importance of this community board, eliminating systems and practices of racism, discrimination, power, privilege, and oppression in all of its forms. I also want to acknowledge and validate the trauma some have experienced, including my own, over the last few months in trying to get this resolution moved forward, as well as throughout the years as a result of these practices and systems. I understand, that discussing this tonight will bring up some of this trauma for those who have been on the receiving end over the years of these systems and practices. And my hope is that one day this will be acknowledged and the validation and care that is long overdue and deserved will be received. Unfortunately, for one of our members, Sally Fisher, who was a part of the EEO, is no longer with us, and she never received the care or the validation or apology that I think she was owed. Rest in peace. This resolution, as we saw, was passed in February of 2020. Tonight, I'm going to go through very quickly history of the history of everything, how we got to this point, talk a little bit about the resolution creation and the passage, the continued challenges of implementation and the impact of all those challenges and not implementing it over all these years, and the importance of board implementation of this particular resolution. So you might recognize some faces here, mine and also Ariel Miranda. We were in this group of people trying to get appointed to our community boards. And the Wall Street Journal was there. They did a story about the post-election, meaning the post-election of Donald Trump as president, the surge in applications to the city community boards, as the article says, up 20% or more. We were a part of that group trying to become, really take more of an interest in our community and get more actively involved in that community. So when I first applied, because I said there was a lot of media coverage and a lot of media interest in this particular issue because of Donald Trump. His election, of course, sparked, as I say here, a sense of urgency in protecting vulnerable communities from punitive policies. And we saw how that was going to play out, because immediately in January of 2017, he initiated the Muslim ban. So there was definitely concern, and rightfully so, in terms of the impact on our local communities. And there was also a greater emphasis on increasing diversity on the city's community boards as well, including the borough presidents themselves committing to this, but also the New York City Charter, which was updated as far as many things, but also for community boards. And it also called upon borough presidents to increase their diversity in applicants for a community board. So overall, there was this surge and there was this interest in diversity and greater diversity on the community boards, and why this is important, what this will mean for our communities. Sorry. But unfortunately, what I began to see and experience and hear from other board members on the, after I was a member, kind of betrayed this goal, this stated commitment to diversity and equity and inclusion. This exhibited itself in a number of ways. There were many shocking things that happened. There were women being removed from chairships. There was myself being blocked from chairship, as well as assistant chairship. These are things that normally in any normal work circumstance, I would not, tolerate. These things are very harmful in work communities. But, it was very hard to get accountability from our body and to get these issues addressed. And I did reach out to the Manhattan Borough President's office, and they recommended the filing the EEO, which is what happened. And as we can see, on October 29th of 2019, Gail Brewer, the former Manhattan Borough President, after a 7-month investigation, basically substantiated all of the allegations in the EEO. This came after interviewing witnesses, many board members, and reviewing our meeting recordings and other things that they came to this decision. And as a result, they did not remove that previous chair but they, she recommended this person get training. That did not happen. But this is, there were a lot of things happen beyond gender on our board, but this was just one of the situations that became so egregious that it had to be addressed. And there was also a lot of media coverage about this issue. Once that this decision came down, there was a lot of infighting about this particular issue in terms of what should be done and whether we should address it at all. This particular article in the city, where a reporter was at one of the executive committee meetings, and that followed the release. It was in November. And this particular meeting, there was a recording, and I'm not going to play any of that here because of the trauma and for the purposes of this meeting tonight. But, I'll put all of this information in the chat. There was a recording of some of the dialogue that occurred that was very traumatic and harmful. It was just a clear indication that we had a problem on our board that needed to be addressed. And so even though this resolution was sparked by this particular incident of gender bias, it by all means, no means was limited to that. We started to understand, many board members started to understand that there was so many more issues around power, privilege, oppression, and discrimination and bias that was beyond just gender. And we wanted to do something about that. And wanted to figure out how can we create a framework in our board where we can address these issues, where there is a system in place to effectively address it and to analyze what's really going on in our board. So after a series of missteps, which included early resolution that did not include women and other diverse voices on issues of diversity, I collaborated with a wide range of board members and worked closely with board member Steve Simon on the final versions of the resolution. And it passed overwhelmingly on February 25th, 2020, with a vote of 32 in favor, 1 opposed, and 5 abstentions. You all have the resolution, but there are several key elements that I'm asking for commitment from this board, which is one is the board committed in this resolution to conducting an internal analysis of its leadership structure from an intersectional lens to identify areas of inequity and exclusion. That means doing studies, analysis of our leadership, who's in leadership, who has not, all of the different areas in which we may be lacking in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The board also committed to providing immediate redress to the women named in the report who were deemed harmed by the former chair. The board committed to planning and participating in regular retreats and trainings to continue to examine changing issues and needs regarding DEI. And the board also committed to establishing a formal process to address concerns raised by board members and staff regarding all forms of discrimination, and to investigate establishing a possible ethics and grievance committee. Unfortunately, these things are very beneficial, and this is something that we all should be doing. But there was a lot of pushback, and even as we fought for this particular resolution to be passed, there was, of course, media coverage about our vote that night. There was, as the article mentioned, there was a lot of tension. There was pushback. There was opposition in some circles regarding this. We had a lot of challenges implementing this resolution from the very beginning, including the lack of support from the chair and other opposition. The comments were made from our board members that we shouldn't air our dirty laundry and to keep it in-house. And there was retaliation against those who participated in EEO complaint. Additionally, only Debbie Nabavian received immediate redress, which we hoped would happen, which included her being restored as chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee. However, Aisha Ogilvy, an Afro-Latina, her issues were not addressed, and myself obviously was not redressed. That redress never happened. We continue to be denied committee leadership on many levels, which continues to this day. And even community members began filing complaints to the NBPO regarding discrimination they observed while watching our meetings via Zoom and other interactions. So, there's definitely a problem, and by our delay in implementing this resolution, we missed opportunities to really create more trust in our community and to be able to address these issues, and they began to just expand beyond what they originally were and grow and continue to harm and hurt both our board members and our community at large. And one of these issues was
just wanted to bring up that we're at time, Madam Chair. I don't know if you want to extend the time or.
well, I'm almost done. I have like
Okay.
literally just I've waited 3 years.
No, I got you.
I hear you. I'm just
We're acknowledging the
I've been
time.
very patient. I've been 3 years is a lot of patience. So I appreciate just letting me. I only have like a few slides left. I promise. I'm going to be very quick. And thank you. One of the issues that came up was one of the ways in which I wanted to expand our efforts to include our community, all diversity in our community, was by when we have national events or other things to acknowledge, like Women's History Month, Black History Month, Pride, all of these different things, Hispanic History Month, to really be able to acknowledge and show linkages to our community and acknowledge those members of our community, past and present, who've contributed in driving forces in terms of advancing these causes. And one was the Black History Month. And so I put together a draft of a Black History Month statement and worked with the executive committee, and they all came up with, together we collaborated, came with a beautiful statement that eventually did come out. However, there was a push to stop it, and there was a heated debate. There was backlash to try to stop it from our leadership. This extended to an executive committee meeting in that February, where it was very explosive. Some of our Black members did leave the meeting because of this. And it was a poor example of, our need to really address these outstanding issues as this resolution continued to not be implemented. Lastly, one of the things that I wanted to say is that I also wrote myself an op-ed about these issues, about diversity. This quote here was from one of our own community members who filed a complaint with the Manborough President's Office that was quoted, where this person said, overall, my observations and experience is that more than a few members of CB12 not only treat the Black members differently, but also those who might not have the same cultural heritage as them. This resident said board members will refer to longtime residents as gentrifiers and colonizers, and concluded that discrimination of Black people by some of the board is a leading factor. I'm sorry, apologies. It is a leading factor in basically saying that it's a leading factor in distrust in the community. And it was very disturbing to hear that community members were filing these complaints by watching us on Zoom in the years after we had passed this resolution. And so, this is something that, people now had a bird's eye view to see us in action. And so it's not something that we could just blow off and say it doesn't exist. So I want to just this is my last point. What is the importance of board implementation? Why is this important that we implement it? Because for one, this community board needs to be accountable for honoring and following up on the resolution it passes. This resolution passed, we committed to it. It gave us a framework to actually do the work that we should be doing. And we should be honoring all of our resolutions and implementing them and making sure that there's accountability around that. The board itself and the community need and deserve a board that can govern itself and represent all of its diverse community fairly and without bias. That is not up for debate. That's what the community needs. That's what we need to be doing. Anti-racism and anti-bias work is a continual learning process. And this resolution ensures the board has a framework to enable this continual analysis, learning, self-checking, and accountability. This is very important. Discrimination robs institutions of talent that it needs to craft better ideas and processes to function at its highest efficiency and capacity. Both the board and the community at large win when that happens. And we have barred and prevented people from serving in their fullest capacity on our board, and it has hurt us, and it has limited our ability to really better serve our community. And this has been a real thing. And lastly, a sound commitment to equitable practice shown through action fosters trust. Trust fosters a healthy working environment of collaboration and innovation. We can't move faster than the speed of trust. And you can't build trust when we're actively doing the things and functioning in a very inequitable way and being exclusionary in our practices. And this extends in many different ways. It extends in, like I said, many forms of discrimination that we mentioned in the resolution. It wasn't just about gender, it was about many forms of discrimination. And we need to be accountable for what we're doing. So what I'm asking for this board is to commit to what we said we were going to do in this resolution, and to create a time frame to move these things forward. This resolution will set the groundwork for us to be able to create these systems of accountability, and so that we can be able to begin to turn a corner, so that all of our members of our community feel represented, so that our board members do not feel excluded and their talents are not being wasted. Thank you.
Thank you. Ooh, right on my timer. Let me put the big timer before we open up the floor. Thank you so much, Tanya, for
I just covered
the
3
thorough-
years in less than 10
I
minutes.
know, impressive. Super impressive. All right, so actually I thought what would be helpful, and I do want to see everyone's kind of like faces or squares on the screen, but I think it's helpful to share screen of the reso on the resolves. And I love that you ended on the point about action, because ultimately that's where we are. And I think that there's 2 things shared, and I don't want to necessarily dominate, but I'm going to speak to offer that there's 2 things that the wheel doesn't have to necessarily get recreated on. One is when you mentioned the newsletter, I had recalled way back when that, and I think it was Liz, you, me, and a couple other folks, essentially a mini work plan on the like just general observances, and essentially like how that can be rotated across. I can recirculate that for like a more like for an actionable item on that regard. And then the other was a starting of the work plan. So if we can, I can share, and if folks don't want to see the screen, I can stop screen at any time. Was one of the action items was, for example, around the training, right? And that was a one-time, I want to say 2021. That was the training that was organized by CB12M. And then since then, my understanding is MBPO now has it as part of their regular like orientation trainings. So, but I think from what I'm hearing, right, is like essentially what there was like a template made for a work plan of taking what the commitments were, right, what the resolves are, and building up a timeline for that. So for example, if the trainings were to be annual, we know MBPO holds that. What do we necessarily as CB12M want to kind of push?
I don't remember a work
in terms
plan.
of,
Maybe I was excluded from that, but I don't remember a work plan at all. I don't remember anybody ever following up with me about this resolution. I don't recall any conversations taking place.
That was, sorry, hold on. Not to interrupt you, but that, let me clarify. That was when, remember the training happened over the summer that you and I organized that. And then I was like, wait, I feel like we broke down and we didn't get into it, but it was like, let's take these action items. And the only one that we completed, because that's what we had at the time, was the training. That one training, that summer training that got done with the survey. So I feel like if that structure of a work plan works, then we can use that. If not, toss it, use something new. So that's what I'm getting at in terms of like, I think that we have some structure.
Kathy. I just want to be very clear on what I'm saying here. I think one of the mistakes when we deal with this type of discrimination and bias against people is we want to move ahead and we don't even apologize or be accountable for what we have done to people. And that is not how it works. And I think that it's twofold. Like you said, Kathy, yes, there is. We're looking for exactly what you said. We're looking for, a plan, and how do we do this? That's what I'm asking. But also, I don't think, again, when I say trust, part of trust is knowing that you are cared for, you were seen, your trauma and pain was heard, and it will be cared for. And that is what needs to also be a part of this. And unfortunately, one of our members died and never saw it. Never saw it. I sat there and I watched her be called crazy and brought to tears in a meeting with a room, with an auditorium full of people. We were at one of the hospital sites.
Yeah. So we should really move on to those of us that want
to speak. I was making a point, and then here is my point, and this is what I'm saying. This is my point here, what you just did, right? I was making a point, and that point is valid. And I don't think we should tell people to just move it along when someone is making a point where it was pain and trauma.
To be fair, I think we should follow the rules of procedure. I'm not saying that because you're this or that, I'm violating your rights. I'm just stating what it is.
Okay, so hold on, let's get to this because I do see a hand and I can't see if there's any other hands. Tanya, I heard what you're saying. You can finish the point. I'm responding to the ask right now. Concrete ask that I'm hearing is about an action plan with timeline.
Right.
Across, not on one, across what the asks have
But in
been and
addition
what the resolves are.
Exactly. In addition to addressing the harm that has been caused to people already and the impact of that harm on them already. And how do we address and fix that along with doing the work of moving things forward? That those two things need to go together, or this is not genuine. It's not authentic. It is just, it's not how things work when we talk about.
So that would be part of the full work plan, excuse me. Let me see, hands, Aisha.
Aisha, you taking
Sorry,
the floor?
I forgot since it's in thingy, it's in that mode. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
your 2 minutes.
Let me stop my screen share actually.
Okay, your 2 minutes start now, Aisha.
Okay, so today is an example of what I've experienced over the years. For me, while this resolution was passed 3 years ago, this is an ongoing circumstances since I started as a board member. Reason being is that part of the dysfunction that I've experienced is related to tasks that I have picked up as a board member on behalf of people in the community and ourselves for what I felt was right. And ultimately, we have a resolution that actually solidifies one of those matters, right? But because I picked up that matter, I became a target on this board. I've been mistreated, overtalked, my work has been erased, my ideas have been copied and stolen and attributed to other people on this board. I've been disrespected. I hear rumors that are complete reframing of what actually has taken place. I have been in meetings that I ran as a chair, violated in a meeting, and saw that being re-engineered to target me as if I was the violator, and never given the opportunity for redress. Never even given the opportunity to speak while there are members that I have watched fall asleep in meetings, not show up, damage quorum. And though I have been in every meeting and meetings that I'm not required to attend on the board and off the board, they have been given more grace than me in matters that are related to me. That is unfair. What I want to elevate is, while obviously we are here talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that these things, when they go awry, often are used as tools to cover other matters. There's a reason that maybe women were targeted in their position because maybe they were advocating for something that people didn't agree with, but in that they are mistreated in ways that men are never treated on this board. And that's the injustice. But what I do not want is erasure for the issues and the topics that rose to be a part of that bias that have been erased and covered, which is why the damage is happening in the first place. Those matters do highlight specific board members, and because it would require that we go into executive session, we would not be able to discuss them in open space in this meeting. right? And I do feel like these matters need to have sunlight, and for that reason, I'm not specifying anybody, but I also do not have trust with our board, with members of our executive committee, because of 10 years of this going on. Across 4 chairs of this board are some of the things that I'm describing. They have happened and they have been done specifically by the chairs themselves, but also by members. In order to marginalize me, overlook me in leadership positions, I was targeted in 4 positions. I've been saying 3, but I actually remembered I was on Youth and Ed, and I was threatened to be removed from Youth and Ed because I called out a violation of process.
So time, we're getting at time here, Aisha.
So I'll bring it to the close, and I'll just say, because of my mistrust, because of the fact that it has taken 10 years, I took a step of my own to reach out to a mediation arm of our city government so that they can become arbitrators in this matter, because I do not feel, absent an independent body or person, that I'm going to get a fair hearing on this matter, on this board. And I think I have 10 years to substantiate that that is the case. Thank you.
Thought I saw a hand.
Well, yeah, I had my hand up. First, I want to say thank you for providing all that background information. I was not on the board in 2019, and I was not on the board yet when the resolution passed. And I am a firm believer of implementing resolutions with fidelity if that's what the body passes, right? I am hearing, though, also that there's a need to reestablish trust that was broken, and that may involve specific board members. And so I guess my question is, do we want to work that first? And that requires going into an executive session, not necessarily tonight, right? But planning for that. Or do we want to also do what Catherine was saying, which is work through the different resolves in the resolution and create work plans around that? I guess what's the like, not that one has to be prioritized over the other, right? Like, I think we can work on both of them together, but at this moment in time, do we want to create a plan for how we're going to work on reestablishing the trust, which I think needs to happen in a more executive session type of environment? Or do we want to use the time that we have now to also work on the resolves?
Actually, I I don't know who or where. I think that I heard 2 questions or 3 things.
Yeah.
One is a general, with the time we have, is the goal drafting a work plan or setting the plan to draft the work plan, right? 2, the question on the redressing, from what we heard right now from Aisha and from Tanya, would require about an exec. I did have second questions to that, but I feel like I've been speaking a lot. Because from what Aisha shared, I think that there's another path. So if it's okay, I hear, yeah, I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna take Liz, Joelle, Jim, and then I'll add myself to the stacks.
Okay, and I'll continue to do the time at 2 minutes.
I'll defer to Joelle and Jim and raise my hand after.
Okay, Joel, I'll restart you at 2 minutes.
So I just want to know what the goal is. Is the goal to create diversity within the board? Is it a gripe with a certain individual? Because I'm a bit lost. Right? I'm a new member, generally speaking. I was obviously after this resolution, but in my eyes, and I'm not taking anything away from you, Tanya, or Aisha. I just want to see what you guys see. Just because, in my eyes, the leadership right now is extremely diverse, right? We have a chair that's a woman. Most of the chairs in the individual committee are women. We have a diverse, even ethnically, a diverse chair of all committees, even in the executive committee, it's diverse to me. I just want to know what the goal is. Is it to do more diversity, or is it to solve the problems of the past? And may I suggest that I do agree, Tanya, that there should be a kind of a board of a mediation board, right? A gripe between member board. So I think that's the solution here. I think it's between individuals within the board. I think that's how we fix kind of like the past. Because I think we're on a good track. I think we have a diverse board, and I think we have a diverse executive committee. I yield my time. Thank you.
I think you had Jim Berlin next.
Yeah, I was gonna say for folks to jot down, and then we'll keep going. Jim.
I just want to give one very specific example of something a specific program that we should move forward to. I believe once or twice this board actually had a retreat in a different venue, and the kind of retreat where there's community building and all that. And I found that those particular programs were very helpful. So all I want to do at this point is just suggest that's something we, in my view, we really want to look at. Thank you.
Then it was Daryl.
Daryl, yeah.
Are you taking stacks, Kathy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Daryl, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Just two kind of unrelated things. One, with the bylaws task force, which Tanya's a part of, I know we're only about, I would say, halfway through looking at each article. But certainly highlighting and bringing to the fore issues of diversity and inclusion is something that we look to do. I hear people saying something about maybe like some sort of grievance committee, and I know that's something that's in the mix. So I think the bylaws folks can at least lay a framework that'll help, but it's certainly not the end all be all, and a lot of work will have to be done by everybody. But I just want to point that out. The other thing, which may be unpleasant, I think, for some folks to hear, is that while I've certainly seen firsthand that there are issues of discrimination that have come up on the board for a number of folks, that just because someone is slighted in some fashion or maybe disrespected or whatever, it does not mean that it's being done because of reasons of discrimination, even though that person may happen to have a number of intersectionalities. It may be because of someone's, perceived behavior, real behavior, attitude, whatever you want to call it. There are other reasons that folks may not be so nice to each other that have nothing to do with any sort of discrimination. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Marielle.
Thank you, Kathy. First, I want to thank Tanya and Aisha, but also many others who have experienced this, for opening up and being vulnerable and sharing what they've unfortunately had to experience. Firstly, I want to quickly just come back on Joelle's point. So Joel, it's not necessarily a point about diversity, because yes, you can say we're relatively diverse. I think we still have a long ways to go, but it's about how do you meaningfully include people, and that hasn't really been done. It's not, a checkbox to say, oh, we have X number of women, X number of Black women, X number of Latinas, X number of this. It's about how are these people actually meaningfully being acknowledged for their contributions, included in a way that celebrates what they have to bring. So I just wanted to put that, to share that point with you, but also with all of us, because as Tanya said, this is a journey. It's something that we're all learning and it doesn't stop. And so we all have to kind of recognize those points. I was going to say something else and I lost my, here we go. So your point, Daryl, about, when there have kind of been instances of, people going back and forth, I think there's a wider point in addition to what's being discussed this evening of just kindness. There is no need for us to be raising our voices at one another. We can disagree without being disrespectful. We can disagree without, attacking personal character. And I really hope that we can create a culture where our differences of opinions are accepted, but again, not creating an environment where we're attacking and yelling, and that's not what a community board should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay, Liz had asked to go, or actually yielded her time. Liz, are you trying to go? Yeah, okay. And then.
Yes, I am. Thank you. I want to thank Tanya and Aisha and all of the people who had a hand in writing this reso and in keeping to move this forward. I think we all have biases. We just do. We all make unreasonable assumptions based on organizing principles. We just all have biases. So I apologize for that, for my role in that. We all have biases. To Daryl's point, I think it is true that sometimes people are just rude, and sometimes people are rude in a way that is difficult to not take personally and difficult to separate out from issues of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ethnicity, class, age, ability. That just, sometimes people are just rude, and that is true. And also sometimes that rudeness and hostility is baked into pick your favorite ism or combination of isms in ways that we ourselves may not fully understand as we are engaged in behavior that is less than ideal. I know that this conversation can go on much, much longer. And I think everybody's brains start to hurt after too long. So I do not anticipate that there's going to be any particular resolution of this evening. But I would like to see, at a minimum, the DEI task force included on the agenda of the executive committee in the same way that every other task force is, so that we can keep ourselves accountable for whatever plan it is that we come up with. And I also second the idea of the retreat, the one that we did back in November of, it was like 2011 or something. Tony Cardona was still living, was a very, very good event. And sorry for going over.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay, so for stocks, I do have a new hand, right, which is Jumina. I know Tanya and Aisha still have their hands, so can go next. And then given we have about 12 minutes left on the topic, wanted to offer some stuff that based on what I've heard. Go ahead, Jumi.
Hey, everybody. So I just wanted to put the question out there. If we do create a DEI committee, right, would it be to address internal DEI related issues within our board, or would it be where the community can share DEI related challenges in community spaces? Let's say, for example, a community space, a school, hiring in certain community nonprofits or things like that. So that's just my question I want to share, put out there. Would the DEI be more for internal based challenges or community-wide situation?
I mean, Liz brought that up, but I'll kind of clarify. The only thing we've ever spoken about new was the Ethics and Grievances Committee that's in the reso. Then there's also the bylaws. Having a task force for DEI. I don't know if that's a intentional proposal or a slip.
My
yeah, but
understanding, the resolution is specifically about an ethics and governance committee.
yeah. Okay. So I didn't know if it was like, yeah, if folks are also proposing there to be a separate one, or is that one that has it all? Okay. Let me go to, so let me go Tanya, Aisha, Isidro, and then
wrapping it up.
Yeah, and then we'll start getting to some next steps.
Okay, so I don't know where to begin, but I will start with saying that that's the one reason that the word intersectionality was used throughout the resolution, is because when you talk about diversity, just because you have numbers, you can have a bunch of women, but they could be a bunch of women who are not women of color, for example. Just because you have a bunch of women, that doesn't tell me anything, right? It doesn't mean there's diversity. It doesn't mean that all that their voice is represented just because you have a number. And on this board specifically, the people that I have seen in my 5 years of being here who are Black, who are in positions of power, were men. Men. Yeah, you can say, oh, we got Black people in leadership and black people as chairs of board of committees, but they were men. There were no Black women in that mix at all. So that's not addressing. That's why intersection, looking at the intersections and how the different social identities intersect and create different layers of inequity. Everything is not equal. You all know that when we talk about somebody who is not a native English speaker, for example, and somebody who is, you have to take all those things into consideration. It can't be, well, we have this. Okay, but you have this, but you don't have that, right? And that voice is not heard, right? So that's what we're talking about when we talk about diversity. And that's where training is really greatly needed on this issue, because I think there's a need to understand these issues in a deeper way. And additionally, in the resolution, we talked about a retreat. That was one of the things that was promised to us by the previous MBPO administration, that we were going to do a retreat, similar to what Jim brought up. We mentioned that in the resolution. That did not happen. Okay, and it still hasn't happened. So that's definitely, I agree, that's one of the things that I think would be beneficial. But I think we need to educate ourselves. I think there's a need for education in terms of these things, so that we can see clearly, you know, how these things take place. And I also, last thing, I think there's been a lot of people talking, like a lot of gaslighting. There's a lot of saying as if I don't understand what discrimination looks like. I came out the womb knowing what it looks like, okay? My people have been here since 1619 dealing with systems. We're talking about systems of discrimination. We're not necessarily, yes, individuals are part of that, but the systems, you cannot be a participant as an individual, but be part of the system of these things happening. And these systems have been impacting folks. This country built on genocide and enslavement. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. It is not about sitting here and saying that somebody doesn't recognize. I know the difference. I've been a Black woman for a long time. I know what I see. And to someone to say, oh, you didn't really see what you saw, or you think it's something else. I know when somebody's just being who they, because I know people by this point. I know when they're just upset. I know the difference between somebody upset and somebody really doing things systemically to hurt and oppress. I know the difference. So let's give people the benefit of doubt and don't patronize them or talk down to them as if they don't understand their own experience, because that is insulting to say to someone that you don't understand and you're misconstruing something. I'm not misconstruing anything. And I don't have a gripe against individuals. It's not about a gripe. This is about systems that this board has created in the 5 years that I've seen, that this board has created systems to oppress certain groups. And I've been told, and I'm not going to get into that, bribe people themselves that they want to elevate some above others because they think it's their turn, it's their time. Okay, to my face. So what I'm saying is that these are systems and these are things that need to be addressed. Thank you, Angel. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's do something. We got 7 minutes. I see 2 hands that have not spoken. What I would like to do is take the 2 hands who have not spoken and repeat back what I have heard, right, as some actionable items and part of a proposal of next steps. Not definitive next steps, a proposal. So Isidro, Domingo, Barbara, this is going to lead us to 4 extra minutes. So go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ashton. And again, I applaud the efforts of Tanya for being persistent, along with Aisha, bringing this issue up and perhaps feeling that they have not been heard. It's an issue. It's something that I faced at times, particularly when I started this community board. I'm happy, Tanya, that you brought up the issue about celebrating Black Heritage Month. It's something that it should be celebrated. If we celebrate Jewish holidays, we should do the same for Black people as well. If we celebrate, Jewish holidays, we should celebrate 3 Kings Days as well. So being inclusive, I applaud you for that. What we need, and I'm going to follow what Darryl and Liz indicated. Maybe we are rude to some extent, and maybe we don't mean what we're saying or how we say it. But even by being rude, we have to be careful because we got to be sensitive. I have learned to be a little bit more sensitive through everything that you have said. I hope that as we come along, that we come to some agreement that we have to be very sensitive. At times, I just want to explode, but it doesn't mean that I'm being racist or being sexist. I'm just probably tired. But listening to you and everything that you have said and how long you've been saying, I have the utmost respect for you because it takes a lot. And however you want to be rude and not accepting one another, it's just wrong. It's plainly wrong. I hope that as we be inclusive, that we think about people that don't speak the language properly, because obviously they have also been discriminated. People of different nationality here feel that they have been discriminated because of their accent. And I'm happy that you will take this into account as we move forward. Thank you so much to 2 of you, Aisha and you, Tanya, and Chair. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, I had said it was Domingo and then Barbara, and we're closing. And
right.
I'll put in the chat the clarification. I know, based on, remember folks, if you've already spoken on an item, you go back down to the list for the folks who haven't spoken. So right now there's 3 of these people, and I would like us, because I know we could keep going. So I want us to kind of keep us in this time bound, not because for the sake of being time bound, but for the sake of being able to keep us moving. Who did I say? What was it?
It was Domingo.
Okay, Domingo, Barbara, and yeah.
Oh, I got several things I want to raise, right? For instance, what's the role of the MBPO in all of this? There was an investigation. There were some suggestions given. I guess they weren't necessarily followed through. There was recommendations for training or retreat from the MBPO's office that wasn't necessarily followed through. When they're technically the ones that assign us. So when we apply for this, we're selected by their office. So when it comes to grievances, I think they're the ones technically responsible for addressing a lot of these grievances, being that we were vetted by them. Therefore, a lot of these behaviors, a lot of the concerns that are being raised are actually put together by them technically, right? Because they're the assigning body. Then my other concern is when we talk about discrimination, yes, I completely agree. And it's like, how do we set up a non-toxic board where it welcomes everybody, right? But I think we can't just pick and choose, right? Because I'm one of the board members, right? And I'm not going to get into the pointing fingers, right? Because at the end of the day, I let my work speak for itself. That people are talking BS about me on social media, right?
I never addressed anything, right? My tribe won when I was assigned chair, right? So let's talk about discrimination and certain connotations, right? So like when we're gonna address something and we want to be the person that's embodying this, I think we have to be very clear also of how we engage other members, and the fact that there's an election every year and leadership is one, right? So if you're able to communicate with your other board members and effectively raise a lot of these concerns, I think there's an election every year that shows who the people are voting for to be able to address a lot of these issues. So I'm gonna close out with this, right? I appreciate everybody. Let's move forward on it, but let's cut the BS and really work to build something that's for everybody, not just to self-glorify some people in this board.
Okay, Barbara.
Barbara,
I just want a point of order. Tanya had made the comment about Black women not being in leadership. Mrs. Palanque North, our late leader, was a Black woman, and also Sybil Dodson, a big, powerful figure in all of Washington Heights, and also community board president was a Black woman. So just wanted to get that on the record. And also, I think something that will come out, and I hear this sotto voce, maybe because I'm, sort of an outlier of being a longtime resident of Washington Heights, Inwood, and white, and the atypical resentment among African Americans toward Dominicans, the newbies that are taking over. Let it come out. Let it come out. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But that is there as an undercurrent, it's our time, we're taking over, that kind of thing. I hear those things, that's what they think, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of that is gossipy. Rather than focusing on people's contributions, people's talents, people's initiatives, people's passions. There's a lot of this, what I just consider silly backbiting. And I just want that, I want that to stop. Focus on the task, focus on the accomplishment, focus everything that we need to, get done. So that's what I mean to say. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. All right, so I got an ask from Aisha on the record. We're already at time. Unless does anybody else have something that is urgent, that is, I have a proposal, question, action item, because I really want us to be generative here.
Yes,
and it's not the last conversation. So Aisha, go, Leo, and then, Jim, is that a hand? Okay, Jim.
I just
got
wanted to
everybody.
point that Barbara's point of order wasn't the point of order.
That's all you wanted to say?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I see Aisha, Leo, actually. Go ahead.
I'll be succinct. Columbia University is doing a continual study. Some members of our board have participated in that process, and in that, they have quantified by processing audio from 2 years of meetings of community boards. They, in their report, specify dynamics in Northern Manhattan and citywide. And in that, what they talked about was the privilege that many of our board members experience, specifically due to privilege, right? Due to being white men, for instance. White men, according to their report and the quantification, technologically, white men are the equivalent of 90 people on community boards in the way in which they are allowed to speak while others are not allowed to speak, overtalk, undermine people's statements on the record, right? And so this idea of diversity, equity, inclusion is more nuanced than just who gets to show up. And I think that we should lean into that information that's being provided to us about the dynamics that are affecting boards, but specifically our board, definitely. That's what I wanted to put on the record. But I will be circling back as I continue to pursue mediation for our board, because I feel strongly that an independent body needs to be a part of this process. Thank you.
All right. I have a response to that. And then Leo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you allowing me to give my 2 cents. So just a couple of things. I want to acknowledge Tanya, Aisha, and any other board member who has faced discrimination. I could say I've faced some type of discrimination based on who I support on the board. I've been labeled, I've been pointed fingers at. There's been moments in meetings where I want to give my 2 cents, and it's usually the same people running the meeting. So, we're not able to give that input. I can say that for myself and a lot of new members. I'm not as new, but considered new. One suggestion I do have, can you please circulate that resolution to the rest of the board? I understand the executive committee acts as arbitration, but I think that it's 50 of us, we should all give input. That being said, is there any way we can also make proposals to how we can work out these details and provide some inclusion? I think that, again, we're hearing a lot of sides. There's about 20 something of us that were not there when this resolution was passed. So oftentimes we hear this at the end of the meeting, and it's not that we don't care. It's not that we don't want to support fellow board members. It's more that we just don't know what's going on. So we just see a lot of pointing the fingers. I think as a board, if we're here doing work, right, we're all appointed, as Domingo says, to come in on a community service type base. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And when you see people calling people out in meetings, social media, it kind of throws the purpose of what we're doing here. So I would just like to potentially send this out to the rest of the board so we can all have input and not just a select group that always has something to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. To respond to that, it went out on Friday afternoon and it went out today. I know earlier in the meeting we were talking about, that was Leo speaking. We were talking about just making sure that folks are getting it, if not reaching out to the office for one-on-ones. It seems like there's some blocking happening. Okay, let me kind of recap what I think I've heard in terms of some next steps. And then if there's something, Liz, what's like, yeah, go ahead.
Just to be
It's
clear.
like eating at you.
To be clear, Pam North was chair a decade ago. Sybil Dodson was chair 20 years ago. And to Tanya's and Aisha's point
Thank you.
about intersectionality and Black women in leadership, I believe the point was that there are no Black women in leadership now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, so I think what we've solidified is being able to build a work plan, a roadmap, whatever we want to call it, based on the items in the reso that's overarching. I think part of the question is, where does that take place, right? Does that take place monthly here at the exec in lieu of having a specific body? Let that be piecemealed once a month. We take one a month, and it happens here in the same way that it did, 30 minutes. Okay, what's this work plan happening here? Is it a special committee? Is it a task force? In terms of building not the ins and outs of the work plan, but being able to see the full map, the full scope, how that can be built, or timing, I should say. I think two things I heard, and based on what Aisha shared, and I don't think it leads us into exec in exec session anyway, is around redress, right? And I think we can't, or I can't, and certain individuals can't say what redress looks like for others, right, who have been harmed. So I think, and then these are rhetorical questions, right? What does redress look like? How? What do people need from a redress process, and from who? And those are, I think, rhetorical kind of questions right now, but questions that would be helpful in terms of being able to identify what is that process, right? So for example, I think what we've heard loud and clear is that is being able to have an intermediary, right? So that is something that we can follow up, I think, through MBPO as a board, right? Unless folks who feel like, you know what, I have parameters for, or I have preferences, parameters, whatever that might be, of what somebody would need in a redress process. And I think that can be helpful in being able to identify the resources. Like Michelle shared earlier, we do have, albeit it's a time-bound opportunity right now, but we also have for fiscal year 24, which is basically the summer moving forward, to be able to request funding if it is the retreat, if it is conflict mediation, if it is a broader mediation between, or not a mediation, but a broader kind of like training space. So those are things that can be built, but again, I share that are time bound. So yes, I kind of wanted to offer that based on what I've heard and what that space looks like so that we can start road mapping. And I think, again, it's not the details per se, but it's about, how do we kind of like steer that to identify the external resources, especially that we're going to need on this journey. I see Angel, Daryl, Tanya, Mario.
I think Tanya's hand was up first.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate all of the different possibilities that are all valid possibilities. I will say that I personally feel, and this meeting has definitely solidified that for me, is that this process needs facilitation. It needs trained outside facilitation, because I can't continue to be harmed like this. I can't do it. I cannot have these things being said, being invalidated, being demeaned, gaslit. I just can't do it. So I think that in order for this to move forward, that's the only way I see it happening, is for someone who can facilitate that work going forward in the ways that you have outlined, Catherine.
Okay. So let me raise a question before I move on to folks. Does that include, for example, the exploration of the Ethics and Grievance Committee? Is that something, for me, for example, I think the bylaws, there's a lot happening on bylaws that we need to clean up. Do we see that as a process that we want to jumpstart internally? Or are we asking to have a contractor consultant develop that too?
That's a good question, because I think, eventually, we have our little groups, right? Like with bylaws, we're doing our thing in a small group. But I think when it comes to the larger group, that's where it's going to get a little tricky when it's introduced. And I think that we have to ask, I think it's important to really look at where we are. Are we able to understand these issues deeper enough to be able to not cause harm while nobody's going to be perfect. We're not saying that, but there are ways in which people are harmed in ways that are just unconscionable. And I don't know what that conversation about the grievance and ethics would look like if it's a bunch of you all are just griping and this, you all just got beef with so-and-so. I don't know how far that's going to go or how effective that's going to be if that's the level of the conversation.
No, I agree. And I think it's tough to lump sum all of it. I know there's hands. I just want to say that I think that there's pieces of the reso that are very specific, like the committee. There is, like the committee, I think, is the most one. Right now, we already have the training given by MBPO. The retreat and some other pieces are, very clearly stated to be for like external, an external facilitator, an external party. So I just wanted to clarify that. But let me go to the hand so we can start wrapping up. Daryl?
Oh,
Sorry, Angel, Daryl, Mary.
So the way that, and this is maybe just the way that my workflow kind of works. I'd like to see perhaps maybe it's a special committee that is put together that comes up with the bigger plan of how we're going to bring in the element of rebuilding trust, right? How are we going to bring in the element of establishing new policies and new committees? How are we bringing in the element of what consultants or what facilitators do we need to bring on board, and when does that happen? Like, create the timeline, right? Like, we need a group of people that are actively working on this. From my perspective, and again, maybe this is just my workflow. It's how I do things at work. Just have a group of people that are managing us through the process, that are creating the bigger plan and then managing the board through the process of that plan.
Okay, so having a consultant specifically for that. Not
It's either a
not a
consultant
committee,
or
but
we
board.
have a group of people and they bring in a consultant, however we want to handle. If that's the work, if the special committee puts in a request to have a special consultant come in and help them guide them through how to do that, then we can consider that.
Darryl?
Yeah, a few things. One, and you kind of brought it up, Catherine, I just wanted to hold space for the bylaws task force and how all of this plays into that. I know we've touched on it. We'll continue to touch upon it as we work through each article of the bylaws. But to give people understanding that probably won't be voted on until September, right? So, I just want to put that out there. And how does that impact that process? Also, it's been talked about a grievance committee, which I fully support and to be included in the bylaws. But I want to, for the record, say I think part of the need for such a committee is because, frankly, the borough president's office hasn't done enough. They need to be more involved, and they haven't done enough, period. And I hope they're listening. And also, as it regarding like restorative justice circles, I believe the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, OATH, I believe they will facilitate such circles. I don't know if that's the direction we want to go, but I just want to put that out there as a possible resource. Thank you.
Okay, I see Wayne and Steve, who I haven't heard from. If you're okay, Marielle, let me jump in. Actually, no, this is a new item, so keep going. Marielle.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Sorry, you went on mute by accident when I meant to lower your hand. Can you unmute, Marielle? There you go.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, all good. Just wanted to come back quickly on some of the points shared in terms of next steps. I like Angel's idea of a special, whether it's a committee or a task force of some sort. What I will say is just being mindful of the makeup of it, that it's not just those who have been hurt or traumatized leading all of the work, because that's traumatizing in itself, that there are people as well as allies and those who I hope all of us are willing to learn and open to learning, a part of that process as well. So just being mindful of the makeup of that. And I think Liz made an earlier point. I think she had put, a suggestion that there should be kind of like a standing update at the executive committee. So it shouldn't be something that's done in silos that no one knows about, but something that to hold ourselves accountable, that every month it's, a 15-20 minute update or, whatever the case may be. And then lastly, I would encourage the inclusion of accessibility. So diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion as well. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, Wayne.
Yeah, I just want to say that since I had some role to play in the crafting of the resolution back in 2020, that a fair amount of thought went into this proposal about investigating the possibility of establishing an ethics and grievance committee. And I'm glad to hear of some of the previous speakers just now mentioned that they would like to see something incorporated into the bylaws. And I want to further endorse that idea that even whether it's a committee or some other procedure, I think there should be a place that people can turn to see how their grievances can be addressed, especially if they're not comfortable approaching the chair or one of the other officers. And I think we need to have something so that people's people aren't upset for years on end without having a place where they feel they can go and where this board will respond to their concerns. So I would like to see the bylaws committee make an effort to see how that can be incorporated into the bylaws, and especially since Tanya is a member of that committee.
Wayne?
Thank you. I want to just build upon something that Domingo and Daryl mentioned, and that is, the way in which we go about addressing ethics and grievance or ethics and grievance committee. And, that is, we really have to let the borough president's office know that we want further involvement. I mean, they are, in fact, the entity that is responsible for appointing all of the members. And I do recall that in years past, and this is pre-COVID because we were meeting in person, there were certain discussions that I found to be completely unprofessional and unproductive. And I sort of emailed on the side of the borough president's office if they could suggest, better ways to handle it. And it was kind of, well, community boards are independent. We are, but I think we also need to take advantage of and be guided by, outside resources that can help us to navigate some of these things. And sometimes doing it completely internally is not going to be productive. So the borough president's office is clearly a resource that we need to lean on and let them know we want them as a resource. We don't want them to say, well, you're independent, but also there's the conflict of interest, board. And I found really interesting when I attended their training on a number of occasions, they do not see themselves as the board that's there to play gotcha. They're there to help you address an issue and try to resolve it before it becomes a gotcha. And the question is, from our perspective, when these issues come up, are we looking to resolve them? Or are we looking to exacerbate them to the point where it's a gotcha? But I think we definitely need to look at and take advantage of outside resources and bring them in to help us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wayne. Okay, so I think that, I'm like looking at my notes, loud and clear. We have next step, some homework, I think, from MBPO. I do think that's tied back to the funding ask, but I think understanding that quasi-independent, not in terms of what agencies we like, oath, for example, because I didn't realize we would be eligible for oath. What resources that we can bring in. I think the ask around the special committee, what I can do is have an open call for members. I will personally share a concern in terms of, because we have so many committees and like a lot of kind of like action items and throughout the committees in this next 2 months before the break. So I feel like, let's see if folks widely from the 50 members who responds in interest and what that's special. And we're calling it a special committee because that's what our bylaws use, not because it's special in any certain way. And what that feedback could be from folks who want to sign up, and then take it from there as someone that, as a committee, that would report back here. And then I think that maybe what we can do at exec at the same time next month, and maybe it's a little ambitious, is maybe flag a list of what we feel we need external resources for, just like a quick brainstorm, because given that right now is the time for us to not hold just MBPO accountable, but right in terms of budgeting, where we can actually make those asks. So I would hate to wait until a committee starts, when right now we've demonstrated this can be the space with the time and a task to keep moving things forward. So I think those are two steps. Elsie, your hand's there. It is 8:53. We got items. Go ahead, Elsie. Oh, sorry, Naisha.
Oh, see. There you go.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. I want to touch on something that Marielle was mentioning before. In my view, I think that the task force or committee should also look at the diversity of actual committees. Because we have, unless you're already working on that, we have at least one committee that is not diverse at all. So this is something, and we'll come to you, Catherine, and hopefully future chairs with recommendations. But like, we're looking at something, we see something that need to change, and obviously you take it and hopefully you will implement recommendations, but it's something just to highlight because you as a chair, there is so many things going on. I feel that one person cannot see what's going on around when you have 50 people involved. And it's important to get another perspective. And it may not always work. You may not always implement it, which is fine. But it's just that it's there. And I feel that it's important. Thank you.
No, thank you, Osi. I didn't bring up that point in the reso because it is something that I've been thinking about and documenting. I think for the sake of time, what I can say is that, and what kind of, in bylaws, we've spoken about this, or about the bylaws, it's the most kind of like obvious, and we've spoken about this for years, is there's a lack of foundations that we have as a board, and that's both for members, for office, just our existence, if you will, and practices that tend to be like, if I have one way, somebody else has another way, and it is what it is. Or, there aren't necessarily, I think, cemented guides or developed or protocols. So for example, I think not just the leadership in terms of committee chair, assistant chair, the lines that we have, but also in terms of special committees and opportunities that folks have on the board. Those aren't necessarily, those haven't been built. So right now is that opportunity for us to keep building that. And, I have been kind of documenting some of the things that I have been learning and would love to share, I think, at an appropriate meeting, some of what I found, and I think opportunities that I've been thinking about for those transparencies, right? Whether that's like, how do I become an assistant chair if I'm interested, or, if I am interested in a leadership position, what does that actually look like? And what processes we have for that, among others. But I'll leave it there. Aisha, your hand's still up. Is that an old hand, new hand?
No, it's a new
Closing.
hand.
Okay.
I just wanted to raise, because we've talked about the borough president's responsibility to the board in weighing in on matters, in being a mediator. But I don't think that we are being honest that at times there may be conflict for the board, for the borough president themselves, because of the political will that they may lack on a certain topic that may come of issue, that may be the reason why you are experiencing duress on the board, or because their liaisons are enmeshed in our process and there are friendships, right? And so people are reluctant to hold accountable the people that they are going to go out with after the meeting and hang out, right? But also because there's political enmeshment, even where elections are concerned and people work together on people's campaigns off of the board. And so because of that, there is an interest in their own personal enrichment and benefit and the support of those that they support. And for that reason, they are unwilling to hold people accountable, which further pushes forward my point that it needs to be an independent entity that is a part of the process, and that is the people that we can go to, because I have that ship has sailed for me in my efforts to get supports with things that have been happening on the board. I've gone through a ladder of commands to no avail. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Aisha. Okay, so on that note, we have the next steps. And I think, so I'll put the call out with the member newsletter. and perhaps some kind of like top lines and on what that would be. And for the next executive agenda, we'll include obviously ongoing conversation. Okay, so where's my agenda? Is Noble's here? Actually, I want to just get are there committee reports? Are there any other committees that need to present a reso or any pertinent items for March?
I mean, land use has 2 resos for the general meeting, but it's nothing that the executive committee needs to act on now.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'm just trying to think. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Angel, you actually gotta facilitate this next portion with Nobles. And then I don't know if Jim can clarify if we needed to vote on it here or if not on the general.
It was my understanding that the general meeting is too late. In which case, either
and today is too late too. So we were ratifying,
therefore,
but we have to ratify here. Is my question.
You have it's going to be a resolution that basically the resolution is coming from the committee. The executive committee can pass it on behalf of the board, and then the board will ratify it at the next general meeting. But keep in mind, we have to make sure that whatever we are doing on behalf of the board will be acceptable to the board, because we don't want to have to rescind, the approval we gave. Now, I don't think in this case that will be the case, but we must keep that in mind. Thank you.
No, so I was just trying to see if it had to be ratified at the exec or was a ratification at the general sufficient. That's all.
Well, general meeting would be fine, but again, I believe that's too late. And
today's too late because it was already done.
Well, okay, if it was already done, then technically you already ratified it because it couldn't have gone out without being ratified. So if it went out before this committee met, you technically ratified it, or it wouldn't have gone out. So now this committee can also ratify it, make the ratification, but ultimately the board has to ratify it at the next general meeting.
I don't think OTM's even gotten to the email yet.
Sorry, hold on. So this is what we're gonna do because I have to recuse myself. I'm in conflict of interest because I work for the Office of Cannabis Management. So Angel is going to take this next agenda item, text me when I can come back.
Okay, thank you. All right, Noble, so it seems like you're going to be presenting.
Yes, all right, let's go.
We got 5 minutes on the clock. Let's go.
Thank you very much, Angel. I just wanted to start off, one, by thanking the executive committee and, of course, certainly all the officers on the executive committee for not only your time, but also making the decisions and the guidance for the board. Your time commitment to this is never lost on me, for sure. That can't do that sometimes because of my kid's situation right now, but I do want to start off by thanking that. I also would like to say this is the 58th anniversary of Malcolm X's assassination, saying this on behalf and for as well my friend Liz Ritter, who reminded me that it is, and I would think of no better opportunity than to discuss these comments from our community board when it comes to the #1 criminal justice reform, I think, that we've seen, the largest impact in decades, and that is the legalization of marijuana in our state, especially when it comes to criminal justice reform. That being said, I'm not going to read through the email that you've received right up before the meeting, so I apologize that it came out late. But what I'd rather do is kind of just go through the summary of this, and I'll kind of go through it. But also, I want to talk about the setup. I want to thank certainly the task force that input it into this. It was a share. It was a very crowdsourcing type of activity for our committee. And I also want to thank you, Angel. Thank you very much for looking at it from somewhat like a legal standpoint, because I'm very bad with citing certain legal documents and laws. So I really appreciate your input there. So let me tell you how I set this up, folks. So basically we set up the comment in 2 parts here. The first part is the direct citing of the MRTA as in the form that the task force asked us to submit it in. A little bit more like legalese, if you will, but certainly had to be done in order to meet the challenge of the objective that they asked us to do. So as you'll see, one of the notifications that the OCM put out was notifications to municipalities, and that's basically the starter gun, the starter pistol for our community boards to act in order to kind of march toward this public comment period. As you also know, it was a very truncated time period. We didn't have but about a week and a half, 2 weeks to act in the way that our laws are just set up in terms of how long you have for the comment period and the winter break and everything as it is, but we did it. And so the notifications to municipalities is the piece that we are directly responding to their notification to community boards on what they're looking for us to comment on. I know that sounds convoluted. Happy to answer more questions there. But basically, this is just us addressing the point where they said that the community board has a role in. So that would be that part. The next part here is qualifications for social and economic equity applicants. So basically, this is somewhat tangential to what they asked the community board to comment on. Not tangential, certainly related, but not directly associated with what they want us to comment upon. As you might remember, in forming this task force, I had asked for your approval to respond and comment in the way that would protect the repertory nature of this law. And in doing so, that might lead to certain areas in this reply that I know your hand's probably tired there, Angel. It's all good, man. I got you, 1:30. And so this is a piece of that. Basically, what we're saying here is, yes, you might not have addressed this in what you told us we can address, but we want to make sure that this is addressed, right? So that's what that piece is about. And we go further, right? That's what this other piece is about here. So now we're kind of going more into the community board, quote unquote, layman's terms here, and addressing certain pieces directly that might not necessarily be tied to anything in the MRTA law. So not necessarily cite it directly, but definitely in the spirit of the law, respond it to against or in reply to what OCM asked the community board to respond to. And so in this piece here with other, we have many different pieces here that might not have a direct cite to the MRTA, but are definitely parts that we felt impact our work on behalf of the community and with the community. And so this is the more crowdsourced piece of what we had submitted. And so what I just told you there is a breakdown of the document that we had sent to the OCM, and that was sent on time at 11:48 p.m. Before 12 a.m., of course, on the 13th. Happy to take any questions.
Great. Thanks, Nobles. I think the first hand I saw is for Steve Simon. You have 2 minutes, Steve.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to squeeze all of this in. I have 5 questions and or comments.
Sure.
So I guess I'll just have to speak very quickly. On the first page, there's a statement here which I would like Isidro actually to comment on, that says that it's the experience of Community Board 12 to have historical conflicting information from the time SLA applicants present in front of the board to when they open their business. And then there's a reference to incongruent information. I'm not sure what that refers to. My second comment is on the second page, there's a statement that says that the community board supports the idea of having the community board be the only entity allowed to make official complaints about cannabis businesses in our community. I don't know how that could possibly be justified under the law. Does that mean that the police, the DA's office, the Attorney General's office, the Department of Consumer and Workforce Protection, none of them can suddenly make official complaints, that only the community board can do that? That doesn't sound reasonable. My third point is we're saying here that the board may develop clear criteria for evaluating dispensary applicants, including their contributions to local community organizations and compliance with local zoning laws. I believe we're going to be reviewing these applications at a point before they've opened up their business, before they've had a chance to make any money, before they can make any contributions to local community organizations. So it's not clear to me how that would work out. And And we're not the ones who determine whether something complies with a local zoning law. That's up basically to the City Department of Buildings and or to city planning. My fourth question is, there's a paragraph here about outdoor signage. It's not clear to me whether that refers to billboards or storefront signs. And then there's a statement within that paragraph that our task force is going to research and analyze how other cities where marijuana is legalized handle outdoor signage and adopt best practices that have been successful in maintaining an attractive and welcoming environment. I would suggest that that's a lot of work for our task force to take upon itself. That's something that the State Office of Cannabis Management should be doing themselves. And my last question perhaps is just, I'm not clear what the distinction is between non-equity and equity applicants. I wish I had seen this a while ago. Well, I guess it did. Maybe it doesn't matter because it's already been sent in. But it would have been nice to have had more of an opportunity to review this than just about an hour before this meeting began. Thank you.
Thank
No,
you.
but do
And
you
let's
want
hear from
to-
Isidro. Let's hear from Isidro first on that
Okay.
piece, and then I can address it. Isidro, would you
Okay.
would you mind addressing that piece? I can bring it back up here.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
No,
I can
what
repeat
was
it.
that last comment about?
Yeah, no problem. Steve just wanted you to basically comment on this first comment here, where we say, unlike the SLA, retail on-site applicants will begin their application process directly with the OCM first and not community boards. The regulations make it unclear what application information will be available to community boards to appropriately opine. Just basically in that statement, Steve asked you to comment. Let me know if that's not correct, Steve.
No. My question was a couple of sentences down, beginning with it has been the experience of Community Board 12 to have historical conflicting information from the time SL applicants present in front of the board to when they open their business. Are we saying that they're not truthful, that when they come before us, they tell us one thing, and then when they open their business, they do something completely different, so that they've lied to us?
Thank you.
I mean, this doesn't seem, I don't know if this is something that I've ever heard us claim before.
Thank you very much, Steve. That's the piece that he would like a little bit more information on.
Yeah.
Now, granted, maybe it's the words are a little bit too hard versus like. Anyway, Isidro, go for it.
Let's hear from Isidro.
Yeah.
I think that we will not want to say that because then it's going to open up a can of worms. Based on the request that we ask each applicant or each operator, they're obligated to bring out truth documentations and true representation of what they are planning to operate. If they go beyond that after we make a decision, then I would say that would be really a lack of judgment, and it should be penalized to the fullest extent. That's based only on the SLA, because we are not, a force that can enforce. The community board cannot enforce, but we got to be vigilant nevertheless.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobles, I can give you like a minute and a
Thank
half
you.
to go through the other ones if you want, and then we'll move over to Wayne.
Yeah, well, let me just like finish up this one first then. Thank you for that. Look, let me consider how I can. So this wouldn't be the only public comment section, by the way. So there will be another one that we will be able to more than likely input into June, where we can certainly like soften that language there for sure. I know that there have been folks within our task force and within our board that might have seen that as an angle that not necessarily that I'm close to, but that being said, there was a general consensus. This was something we wanted to add, but we can certainly soften language, Steve. Let me go to the four other pieces that you brought up. Enforcement. I think that piece right there, you're asking like, is it too general in terms of the way that we go about saying, in a little bit, not only just too general, it's also a little bit maybe too resolute. I hear that. I think the spirit of that piece is more of the community, like as a community board, we would like to be one of the main voices in the priority process of complaint in terms of either taking a business down because of going outside the community boundaries of the laws or what have you. Reason being is because a lot of folks do you have prejudiced thoughts about the legalization of marijuana and its use? And we want to make sure that we're not only there to support the businesses, but also guide them on the best way to integrate into the community. And in doing so, we think that the community board should have an outsized voice in enforcement. I don't think it's necessarily the generalization way that you're thinking about it, where it's like we're the only ones that can, chastise or something, or make a report on one of these groups.
But that's what it says.
So, sorry. Let me go to your third one. Plan for clear criteria stipulations. I think that's also, I think that there were a lot of generalities here. We could certainly be more specific in areas, and around the criteria for stipulations that you had mentioned, I think that's certainly one of the places. I think that we can drill down more into that when the time comes for our June comment period. But for right now, we want to kind of keep it broad, knowing that we would have that opportunity. Fourth piece you had here, the outdoor signage. Again, I think this is about specifics. We kept it broad so we can keep the door open for the opportunity. But I am 100% with you. I do think that the scope of our research seems too big in scope for maybe the first year. But as we said, we do want this task force to become a committee, and we do see that as being an ongoing piece. There was one more, Angel, give me 10 seconds, as he had 5 in here. Non-equity and equity applicants. Let me get back to you on that piece. But basically, what we had there is, again, in protection of the repertory spirit of the law, just making sure that there is a delineation between those two when it comes to the CDIs, the communities of disproportionate impact, which is written in the law, just making sure that there is deference paid to that.
Thank you. Wayne?
Thank you. So Nobles, I have, I think, either 2 questions or just 2 areas under which I have questions. And I'll begin with the second, and it touches on something that, Steve said, and we need to be careful because what is stated as the intent in any verbal presentation is not what is submitted. The position of the community board is what is written in the resolution or letter that the chair is authorized to center in comments. So if this says in black and white that we're saying we want the community board to be the only entity that can comment, that is our position. And the question is that really our position? And that leads me to my second area, which is process. I mean, no full committee or task force has the ability to take a position on behalf of the board unless it is voted on by either the full committee, the executive committee, or the chair. So I guess my question is, did Catherine, review and approve and submit this document as being the position of the board, because the task force cannot do that on its own?
Catherine approved it.
Okay, so
I submitted it.
Before or after Catherine reviewed and approved it?
Oh, definitely after. I mean, the task force, reviewed and approved it.
So my point is, if this is going to the exec committee or to the general board to, ratify, I think a number of things that are stated in black and white need to be changed because I don't believe they represent the position of the board. I don't think that, the community board can say to a community-based organization that has interest or other, block associations that they do not have the right to comment or submit a complaint regarding any business, cannabis or not. But that's what this says in black and white.
I'll also just clarify that Catherine made sure that I took a look at it before she gave any approval, considering her relationship with the entity that we were submitting this to.
Yeah, I understand. And I also think we need to understand the role the cannabis board, and for that matter, the dormitory authority is supporting it, play, because a lot of decisions are not even made at the city level. But I think, I just want to go back to the point that these written documents are the things that actually represent the board's position. And if in a verbal presentation, we say they mean one thing, but in black and white, they say something else, that's problematic.
Totally understood. Totally understood. And you were completely correct. For sure, mea culpa. We will change the more absolute language, if you will, for sure, and take a look at some of the other before we bring it to the board. And then I can guarantee you during the next public comment period, we will make sure that it is referred back to in correction. You have my word on that.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Faye, before I give you the floor?
Yes, you're talking to me, Andrew?
Yeah, just a clarifying question. No, was the next opportunity is in June for public comment?
I believe so. So the way that this is working right now is these are going in, and we can certainly send another one there, and I can see if I can connect with some of the folks that I've met in this journey at OCM to accept maybe a revised one after the deadline, because I don't think that they got to this email, right? At the end
Perhaps
of
an amended version, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had about a week and a half, to put this together. I'm sure everyone knows that doesn't mean that we wanted to, or really thought to shirk, process here. I'll be honest, it was a misunderstanding on my part, but clearly, the chair took a look, and we sent this in after she took a look with Angel and approved. But I had thought that there was a different process, so I certainly take ownership for not maybe calling a flash meeting of the executive to review this and give us their notes too before the 13th. But that being said, yes, there will be another period to be able to enter this. Right now it's targeted for June. There's not an exact date, because what's going to happen is after they have all of the comments, the public comments for this, they're going to review that. They're going to basically come back to us saying like, this is what we heard from you. Do you this is what we're going to do about it. What are your comments based on this? And so at that point, we would be able to kind of revise with more specificity from OCM on some of these points, revise our reply back, and there, Wayne and Steve, and again, I do apologize for the more absolute language here, we would be able to soften the language to be more specific to our community board needs.
Yep. I think that's a good plan, and if you could just check it to see if they'd be willing to accept an amended version.
Oh, certainly. Yep.
Okay. Faye, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, probably less than that. Thank you. And I want to say good evening, everyone. Yes, actually, my question is if there is any possibility that maybe this document might be included something about the school proximity where those stores are going to be open, like any new store, hopefully that, will not be near any school. And if the school district would be allowed to, or would be considered to mention kind of inviting them so they can provide their inputs into this matter. I don't know if this is something that we can include in this document, but
yeah, it actually came up. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your question.
That's all right. It's just a thought.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because that was the number one thing that came up in literally the first meeting. We had a couple meetings and then a bunch of virtual meetings, if you will, on this. And Mary's here; she can definitely attest. Education in children, when it comes to how this rolls out, was the first thing. When it comes to proximity specifically, we did have a conversation on that. And right now, from a dispensary perspective, they're using the same law I believe the SLA is using. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Angel or Cedro, I believe it's 200 feet or is it 500?
It's 200 feet.
It's 200 feet, right?
200 feet, yes.
Yeah, so we felt that was sufficient for the purpose at the moment. But we can certainly relook at that, from maybe perhaps other folks felt that was not sufficient once they come back to us, if that's something that they want to kind of pursue in revision.
Maybe last I wanted to comment that maybe that's a question, or you may want to contact the school district superintendent office, and before we make this document official, so at least they be included and we can hear from them.
I think that's a fine suggestion, Faye, and I tell you, we can certainly do that with more time For sure. So like basically maybe now between now and the June comment time period, if you want to do, on the education committee, just like, a small piece of a roundtable there, where we can send someone from the task force, or even myself, depending on schedule and stuff, and have a conversation if they're there about it. I would love to hear it, like all pieces of it, and then we can take notes and then add that into the next comment period.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have two more hands left, and the first one is Eliasad, and then I have Tanya. You'll both have your 2 minutes.
She's gonna go first. I don't mind.
Okay. I'll restart the clock, Tanya.
Oh, yes. So one of the questions that I have is, you talk about that this will, all of this work will be aligned with the board's goals and objectives, but I think we need to be clarified, like what are our goals and objectives around this? Because we haven't weighed in, right? So what will be your process for understanding the goals and of the needs and the goals of this community overall regarding this issue? The second thing, I wanted to ask is, how closely will you be aligned with elected officials?
Great question.
And the
Great
reason
question.
I say that is because people sometimes have vested interests, particularly with certain proprietors and certain things, and it prevents the equitable, the enforcement of certain things or addressing certain things, so how closely aligned are you planning to be? And I wish is that you would not be at all. But so those are my questions.
Those are excellent questions, Sonia. I think I can answer the second one with an answer to the first. And the reason being is, from a goals and process perspective, we're very much kind of we're building this plane as we fly it. And pardon the cliche here, but honestly, we really are. So the law was put into place, and the public comment period started right before, I was like right at the beginning of Hanukkah, I think, and folks were going on break. That's just the way the timing of the law came down. And so it was very, very quick in terms of what we had. We only had 60 days to, comment, and, we didn't get back to our general board meeting until the end of January. So when it comes to the process, we're very much building that process now. The first piece of this process was, hello, community board, do you think we should have a cannabis task force to address this law? Everyone basically said yes. That was the first piece of the process. So now we've built the first body. The second piece of the process was, okay, well, what's our first submission into our response to this law? Which I honestly think, despite, some of the revisions that we need to do here, I do still think we're between like 80 and 85% there in terms of alignment. No worries. In terms of alignment on what we need to do with this document in terms of our community response. I think that the nitty gritty of the very important 15% is what we need to get right in revision. And so that was the next piece of the process. And now we have a little bit of breathing room. And so the way that this next process goes, like I kind of addressed with Faye, we want to have more conversations individually on, different committees, and then with some other folks, including potential, electeds, not necessarily meaning electeds would have a piece of steering this, but we do want to hear their POV, especially the Manhattan Borough president, and work these POVs and opinions into our next comment period. And so, you're right to ask the question, what's the process here? Because we're building it as we go. And there really isn't like a very clear set yet, especially considering the break between the time of June and when we come back. We're going to need to do work too. And what does that process look like? We're really very much figuring this out. I do guarantee you, though, I will be as transparent as as the things that I know, at least, so as possible when it comes to that. But there's just some things I don't know that I can tell you to really answer that question. As for goals of the community board, I think our goals are aligned. We want to protect the repertory nature of this law. We want to make sure we have a hand somewhat aligned to what the to what the licensing committee has, but maybe learn from what they've done and make it a more streamlined and turnkey process when it comes to this rollout. I think that those goals are aligned. But we can always, add more as we have these further conversations to look out for more aligned with our purpose as the board. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eleazar,
hit me.
and then I have Isidro, and we'll wrap this up with those two last hands.
Yeah, that's short and sweet. I don't believe that I should give 100,000 words just to get to the point. I think that we want to be careful of is not to, Mr. Crawford, is to replicate
I suggest to.
The licensing committee could be an extremely source of experience. So to avoid trying to reinvent the wheel in some cases. Now, there's an issue with a law like this cannabis law that was passed and has little to no enforcement. By the time that the first or the second dispensary opened up, there were 1,300 illegal dispensaries.
Boom, just like that.
Yeah, just like that. So
it's true.
Yeah, this is the kind of law who appears to be more economic intended than the social justice benefits that it was originally thought of. So we got to be mindful of what it is that this law passed by the New York State really means. So I think working together with how the SLA works is a great source of knowledge, and so we don't get to fall into reinventing a wheel that we don't know of. This is unknown territory.
Yep.
For the most part. So I think that we have in that case, just in that case, a lot of information to gather from.
These are great comments.
Nobles, before we take the comment, Faye, would you mind putting yourself on mute? I'm not the host, but
Thank you.
Faye?
You caught me out of guard. Yes.
Hey, Faye.
Can you mute yourself? Can you
I'm
mute
sorry.
yourself?
I'm talking to myself. I'm sorry.
Eleazar, thank you. Great points you make. For sure. When it comes to when it comes to licensing, I've always had not only the utmost respect, but also the licensing committee to me on the community board, even before I was on the community board, is honestly the pinnacle of community board involvement. And in that regard, in the leadership that's made it that way, as effective and as tumultuous sometimes as it is the number one way that's what democracy looks like. And so we want to use the great parts of that. We want that as to be the backbone of what this marijuana or this cannabis committee could be eventually. Because there's, I would say, so much amazing right in the way that a licensing committee is constructed on our board. That being said, and Angel was definitely great to input here on this. There are ways that we can take some of the heartache out, and maybe the personal nature out, if we do this right, and it could be even more streamlined. So I hear you 100%. It's not going to be a carbon copy of the licensing committee. It's going to be 2.0, I'm hoping. No offense, Isidro. No offense. You're amazing job that you do already. But I would hope that this would be 2.0, built for future instances. Like maybe the licensing committee was built, in this modern form 10 years ago to deal with today's problems. I want to make sure the cannabis committee eventually is created to deal with 20 years from now and what those look like to our community. So I hear you loud and clear, my man. It'll only be in that as much as possible. And when it comes to enforcement, lastly, because that was in here, in the comments section here, I think that enforcement is going to get tighter with some of these what we're calling gray market dispensaries as more specifics come out from OCM.
Okay.
Like, as you know, they're going to come back to us now after hearing from our committees. Sorry, did I go over?
Yep.
Sorry.
Isidro, you got 2 minutes, and then I'm taking Jim, and then really that's got to be the end of it, guys.
You got it. Thanks, Angel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. So Novus, I think that your committee or task force will do really, really well because already you have the infrastructure, not only as an example of the licensing committee, but also the staff themselves, the staff members. They're really well trained onto what type of documentations, and they're very, very reliable in getting documentations that you will be required or requiring the operators to bring. So I think that you will be in good hand because the staff members there, they're really, really doing a great job. And I'm looking forward to learning from you and the committee how you proceed. I think that you already have excellent templates that you can use and modify. And based on the experience that I have with the license committee, the key part will be like how truthful the operators are going to be. And taking into account that this is going to be a larger amount of money that's going to be invested in some of the licenses, there you have to be a little bit careful because they can promise you everything, but when it comes to the implementation of it, they'll bring probably nothing. So you have to do a lot of legwork to know who the operator might be, background, ask like 1,000 questions. The template that we have for the questionnaire for the license committee, I think is a great beginning for you to ask like really in-depth questions. And whatever I can do to assist Novos, know that I'll be there for you guys.
I really appreciate that, Isidro, and for the advice there. That's one of the reasons why we felt we weren't going too much out on a departure, to think about the scope of what this committee can eventually be when it comes to like looking at other models. And then like we really want to lead the way as this community board in terms of what this looks like for the country. We think that could bring more funding for us. We think that could also bring more staff, but it was the current staff that we felt comfortable saying that this is what the scope eventually could be. So I appreciate you giving a shout out to the staff, because everybody, I mean, like, that's the way this works. So 100% with you there. Thank you.
Thank you there. Jim, last comments before we move on.
Well, this is a parliamentary comment.
Wonderful.
Technically, we all now know that Catherine has a conflict of interest. Therefore, the person who actually approved this on behalf of the board was Angel.
Yes.
As the vice chair. So that's one technicality. The second technicality is normally once something goes through this process, it can't be changed. The board just ratifies whatever went out. And there are very valid points made by the executive committee. So again, technically, we don't need the approval of the executive committee because it was approved by Angel and already went out. Now, I think what we ought to do, because I think, as was discussed, some statements may be a little bit too strong or whatever. What we do at the general meeting is what we will do is approve or ratify this letter, but with clarifications. And I think by calling them clarifications, basically it's just a nicer version of what we already said. Even if so, and I already made my other point. Technically, we don't need the executives committee approval, and I think it would just confuse the matter. So we'll just do these clarifications based upon what we heard and Nobles agreed to, and anything else obvious, any other clarifications, I like that word, that the board has at the general meeting.
And you have my word, Wayne and Steve, it will be to you way in advance of 1 hour before the general meeting in that regard. I have more time.
Wonderful. Okay. I think that is the right course of action for us to take. We'll call them clarifications when it's presented at the general board next week. And in the meantime, we'll take a look and see if amendments are, allowed. And now that we have a formalized task force in place, this will not happen again, procedurally speaking, because we have a task force in place.
Exactly.
For us to follow the process.
Yep.
Steve, I see one hand. I'll take.
And when we're done, we have to let Catherine back, right?
Sure. Yeah, I'll let her know that she can come back in. So there will be no vote at this executive committee meeting tonight on this.
Cool.
Okay.
Steve.
Yeah, I would appreciate it if you would find out from the
OCM if we can get it clear. Yeah.
OCM whether or not we can submit an amended letter.
I'll send it to the gentleman that came to our community board to speak. He's the one that runs it.
I think we're talking about more than just clarifications. There are serious changes that are required, and I would like to see it as an amended letter.
We'll look into it for
Steve.
sure.
Thank you. All right, well, with that being said, that brings us over to committee reports, and our chair is back. So I hand it over back to you.
Cool.
Okay, cool. I got a bunch of folks who will be referring to the minutes. Is there anyone who needs to, or not need, but would like to present something urgent or important? I'm guessing that's Steve and OC for help. Is that a new hand, Steve?
Yeah, I just want to bring one thing up to you, Catherine. I've been, there was the gambling disorder clinic at Columbia, which made a presentation to my committee a month ago, has requested a letter confirming that they made the presentation so that they can include it in their request to the state to be certified as an official gambling disorder clinic. So I would like to be able to do such a letter. I don't know, maybe both of us should sign it to confirm that they made the required presentation. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, that's the scope.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, given the nature of time, yeah, Faye, are you making a presentation? Are you?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to make a comment in regard to the possible, or the idea that, you know, as I mentioned, our committee had already presented the goals for 2023. But one of the things that I would like just to say, I know Steve might be interested in hearing, that we would like to have a in our next meeting, we would like to bring the discussion of bullying. And we have not yet finally decided whether we're going to have like a panel discussion in our meeting. Is it going to be a virtual or hybrid, as you know, the chair indicated? And also, I have also proposed to the committee that we may bring back the conversation of our children, our choices for the conversation about the charter school and public schools. Like we're gonna have a second or part 2 of that event, so we can bring that conversation to find out where we are, you know, what update, you know, the community can benefit. And since 2010, there has been many, I would say, a mass expansion of charter school, but we really need to revise that conversation. And I just wanted to put that, you know, up there. I will share with you. And Steve, I know that you mentioned that you were interested to know whether or not we're going to have a bullying discussion. So if it's anything, so we can follow up via email if you want to share any thought. Yes. And also if the chair wanted to, you know, but I just want to basically just to report this, that we have that intention. So let's see. For the charter school, I'll propose the committee that maybe we can have this on March 4, but I think we're going to change it because it's too close. I already have spoke to several folks, but I also waiting on the side for some guidance from the chair. So that's what I wanted just to say. But at least on record, you know, in March, there is 2 activity that I have proposed the committee. And the next meeting, I'm proposing that we have the bullying for March 13. And for March 4, I thought that we may have a conversation on charter school versus also public school, but I think that's something that I'm going to revise that and propose probably for the end of March because it's too close. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Oh yeah, Faye, I want to thank you. Ellie Bueno is also interested in making sure that we address the bullying issue because it keeps coming up. Whenever there's like one of these major shooting incidents, you find out that normally it's a guy who went off the deep end, and very often they claim to have been a victim of bullying. So I'm glad that we're going to address that and see what it is how our school district is dealing with that issue.
Yeah.
I just want to say that when you bring up the charter schools, be careful how you phrase it. You can't really say public schools versus charter schools because the charter schools are public schools.
Correct.
So you got to be careful how you phrase that.
No, I'm going to share the title. It's the same conversation that we had back in 2011 that when former chair Pamela, was alive. We had that was the first event that we had publicly as a committee. And actually the idea was to educate the public, especially the parents, about the definition of charter school. And we wanted to call that again, but just basically to continue that education, informing, and to get to know exactly the progress that they have done. So it's going to be the same thing, but I think the title that we use is going to be everything is going to be basically the same that was well accepted by the community. So we will continue this conversation, and any suggestion that you also wanted to share with us in terms of the bullying or anything else, so it would be much appreciated.
All right, very well. We should probably try to include people who are dealing with the mental health issues in the community as well.
Yeah, mental health. I see mental health as a great input.
I think you guys. Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, y'all can connect. I see a lot of joint opportunities,
Yes,
or
very
if it's
good.
not joint, what are other ways? I know most folks are going to refer to the minutes. Leo, I know you're here in lieu of Debbie. Traffic was a hit last month. Or I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. Did you want to report back about the meeting?
Thank you, anyway.
Yeah, sure. So as Madam Chair stated, we had a bit of an interesting meeting. We had the Office of Technology and Innovation present with City Bridges. As you guys know, read and patch articles. We have 5G towers being installed in our neighborhood. There was a lot of discussion on potential health hazards they may bring. They had a great presentation that explained why they're bringing it to our neighborhood, why we're considered an equity. I believe it was an equity. Forgot the name of it, but we're considered an equity,
like neighborhood, I think.
Yeah, and so they're deploying it in our neighborhood. Councilmember De La Rosa was present as well. Prior to that, we hadn't heard anything about them. They said that they sent an email out in October to Councilmember De La Rosa, and obviously she gets hundreds of emails from her constituents daily. So it got lost in the mix. And then Kathy stepping into her position, hadn't heard about it. So about the second week of January, when they sat down with the Office of Technology and Innovation, they proposed 4 or 5 sites. During the meeting, they brought up another 5, 6 sites. That was called out immediately by the chair, Debbie, the chair of the community board, Kathy, and Councilmember De La Rosa. And it's an ongoing process. So it's here to stay. Like I said, it's being brought to equitable neighborhoods. CB12 is considered an equity district. These broadbands give our neighbors who lack broadband at home, so it gives them free Wi-Fi, allows for emergency and governmental services. It provides charging stations. So there's a lot to it. We heard from a lot of community residents. A lot of them weren't happy, mainly because these towers are being installed in front of residential buildings. According to the presenters at City Bridges, they say scientifically that it has no harm. They weren't concrete on that, so there was a bit of misunderstanding, I guess, on both sides about that. I'm sorry. And yeah, so it was a pretty interesting and long meeting.
Cool. So I see Steve has his hand up. Eliezer has to go, so he's going to give his report shortly after. I think we'll hear more in detail next week, and hopefully I'll have an update as to the follow-up meeting with OTI and when they might come back to the board.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to add, one of the issues that arose was the lack of outreach on their end. Again, they reached out to about a couple of weeks prior to us having the meeting. I know that they stated that they have a 60-day deposition where people are allowed to give feedback. That wasn't allotted to our community. In the 5 proposed sites that they mentioned in the presentation for the first time, we also, Kathy brought up a good point that it had not been shared to the Amsterdam Avenue community where they plan on installing most of these 5G towers. So there's a lot going on. I know that we agreed for them to come back at a later date to discuss the new proposed locations. So stay tuned.
Steve, Ellie, if folks are gonna not refer to the minutes, can you raise your hand just so I can get a time check? So thank you, Leo, for stepping into.
You have Eliasal and Joel and Marielle. They want to give their committee reports.
I have a question for Leo.
Go ahead, Steve.
Actually, three questions. Number one, I believe I read somewhere that they said that they had informed the community board by sending us an email or a letter back in October.
Well, they sent the letter to Council Member De La Rosa's office. As she stated in the meeting, she gets hundreds of emails daily, and they got lost. They had one attempt, and that's about it.
So they didn't say that they also sent one to the community board?
No, Kathy found out about mid-January. She found out about it.
All right. And is there a resolution coming out of the committee?
No, it's kind of an initiative. So they just came to do the due diligence and present it to our community. But it's something that it's pushed by the mayor's office. So it's something that's here to stay. It's an initiative.
All right, one more question. Did they explain why 2 of the towers are going on Fort Washington Avenue if this is an equity initiative? Why they felt that the Fort Washington Avenue community needed them?
So they didn't necessarily explain it. I guess it covers the area. Washington Heights and our district specifically is an equity district. From my understanding and what was explained by City Bridges is that they choose the locations based on several criteria and also include restrictions. So there's certain places they cannot put it. They can't put towers within a block of each other. They cannot put it near schools. That was a big issue. They're not supposed to put it in landmarks unless they get approval from landmark. They cannot put it in parks unless they get approval from parks. But they did not explain specifically why those 2 locations.
Yeah, well, one of them is next to a landmark park and also pretty close to a school. Now,
Yeah, Jim Berlin brought up that point, and again, their explaining to it was that sometimes that when they look for these places, it depends on where the connection or tower connection is stronger. So these 5G towers act as 5 radio towers, as they say. So they're a lot more powerful. Sometimes they have to put in certain places depending on where the signal is stronger. So, or where there's less.
Did we see the article in yesterday?
Hold on, Steve.
Time.
Yeah, just because the timing is 9:50, the record, they did have a slide deck. Actually, that's a good follow-up point. I don't think we got the slide deck separately. And we do have the recording on, which I do encourage folks to check out. It's still ongoing. And one of the sites they did talk about, like, I think the one on Fort Washington, which is technically Cabrini, that was the one that they were going to revisit. So it's not a closed door at this point.
Did you see the article in yesterday's Daily News in which you're quoted?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it came out. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you for the heads up.
It's a full-page article.
Back and forth.
Great. Let me read that because I didn't get the heads up I asked for it. Okay. Ellie got to give his report because he got to go. Joel too, and then I know Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for taking away my thunder. I was just going to mention that.
Go ahead. They didn't hear me.
It's okay. You've already asked 125 questions. That's okay. I get it. Quick. In regards of an incident that took place in, I believe it was 189th Street, Audubon, one of our local stores, one of the bodega stores, in which 2 kids purchased one of those cannabis candies, whatever they're called. We would like, from the public safety perspective, to see what's out there educational wise, not to just give us the training in how to become a dispensary owner, but also to have some sort of education training for parents. How can they teach their kids to identify the difference between Spider-Man candy wrapping with contain cannabis versus a real candy wrapper. So we want to bring the DA's office and see if there is any programs they may or may not have in accordance to some sort of educational piece to prevent this continuance of lack of knowledge about what these products are and what they look like. So that's going to be what's going to happen in the next meeting. Angel, I'm done.
All right. Thank you.
Right.
Joel, then Jim.
I'll be brief. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the whole board for taking some time out and participating in this meeting. Just on access to capital, the Business Development Committee had the Upper Manhattan Opportunity Zone.
UMass.
Upper
Empowerment
Manhattan
Zone.
Opportunity Zone. Yes, UMass presents Mr. Espinosa. Mr. Espinosa was so kindly to disseminate some information on access of capital. They currently have 3 loans, which is the micro loan. They have a term loan. They also have a line of credit. I urge you to pass this information on to our constituents that are in need of capital or need of cash flow. It's a great opportunity. Mr. Espinosa told us that the application was for maybe 3 months and they did not receive enough applicants to kind of, take away the fund. There's still, I think it's like 1.2 million available for capital. This is a great opportunity for our residents in this district. So please pass the word forward. UMass is a great organization and they're giving access to capital to our constituents. So thank you.
And Jim?
I just wanted to mention relative to the Traffic and Transportation Committee that as you sort of heard, the plan that was presented to us, the location of these various towers did not make a hell of a lot of sense. So we should keep that in mind.
Thank you. I also don't know why Daily News got a paywall, but if anybody got the link, email it to me. All right, I think that covers, folks. I want to appreciate the flexibility. I know it is late, and we'll hear all about what happened at your committee next week. I did want to flag 2 things under new business.
What about the bylaws? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Daryl. You got to report.
Still here.
Are you gonna report? Yeah.
Still here. No, I was just going to refer to the minutes. But if folks are interested, we're covering Article 707, which is the role of committee chairs, and as well as board officer elections at the next meeting.
I'll be sure to include those 2 again in the member newsletter. Okay, those are the hands that I see. We do have technically it was 2 things under new business. I know that Liz left early, but wanted to share tapped our veterans, if you will, on our board in terms of seniority, but also just who folks tend to gravitate to in terms of support for resolution writing. And so that's Wayne, Liz, Steve, and Jim. And so Liz took the pen on drafting a guide to creating resos, part of the many guides that we need to develop for the board, not just for new members, but for all. So she shared I think next month we'll probably have a draft, or I'll see if we can circulate it so folks can opine. And then at the next committee meeting, at the next executive committee, we can discuss. And this is just a guide for any member on how to write a reso and some tips and tricks. And of course, space for one-on-one support. So if anybody is working a resolution, or if they're tapped on their committee to lead one and feel that they want more one-on-one support, we'll have one-on-one reso tutoring support, if you will, by our 4, I don't even know what to call them, but wordsmithers and like PhD holders in reso writing. So super appreciative of being able to pass those skills along. And then last but not least, we got tapped, and actually this is currently at the New York City Council for a bill. And I know different committees have discussed it. So I wanted to bring it here because if it is something that we're interested in discussing or perhaps drafting resolution, because it crosses multiple committees, I thought this would be the space. And this is around support for charging stations for the lithium batteries. Julio Batista, actually from the hospital, had raised, where we were as a board about it. And so obviously lithium batteries, we've had so many fires and recent fires in our district because of the charging, and there's a need. And right now, City Council, I think the bills for the newspaper stations that are vacant to be converted into charging stations. And that, of course, crosses again to housing, human services, traffic, transportation, health and environment, all of them. So raising here to see if there is interest in creating a resolution related to lithium battery through the city on charging. Steve.
Yeah, as I understand it, the pending legislation in the city council really deals not with this newsstand issue. The Parks Department is dealing with the newsstands as a concession for the deliveristas, and at this point is looking at 2 or maybe 3 locations around the city. And I'm not sure that we have any, apart from a small newsstand outside the medical center at 168th and Broadway. I'm not sure whether we have any other vacant newsstands in our district. But the legislation at the city and pending in the city council that I think we should look at is a bill which I believe was introduced by Gail Brewer, which would I think make it illegal to have these like unauthorized lithium batteries or ones that are not made specifically for the particular e-bikes. And I think the fire department has also weighed in on this issue as well. We should definitely be looking at that issue. And we've had a number of these fires ourselves.
It's the non-UL listed batteries.
Yeah. So I think it seems to me that's a no-brainer. We should definitely support banning the ones that are not UL listed.
So I'm hearing that's almost like 2 separate resos, right? Support of the ban, and I think that's state regulation, though, is it?
No, it's a bill in the city level.
Okay.
Yeah.
City.
So just to clarify, the newsstand initiative, that is City Hall. That's the mayor pushing that as a program. There's a series of bills moving through the city council or have been introduced in the city council that have to deal more so with the fires and preventative measures and things of that nature that the FDNY has been pushing, just to clarify.
Yeah.
So let's go Joelle, Marielle, Angel. This was just, if there's appetite for it, we will come back next month and see where we land.
I actually spoke to Councilwoman La Rosa about this, and this is a great opportunity, just because it allows access to deliveristas that don't have like a driveway or don't have access to bring up their bike or their battery up a flight of stairs, because there's a lot of walk-ups in our neighborhood. I fully support this, and I think it's something that's going to increase the revenue of Washington Heights and Inwood. Does anybody have like, I guess, a summary or actual, the actual bill that you can forward it to me so I can pass it on and kind of read on it? But I am in full support about this.
So Marielle and then Angel before we close for the meeting.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, no, happy to be looped into this. From the housing perspective, we're hoping to invite the FDNY at some point this year to talk about, kind of fires and buildings and so on. And so there's obviously, a little bit of a connection there. But yeah, just loop me in with the relevant colleagues and happy to take the conversation forward. Thanks.
I just want to say that we should have a conversation and that we should think about drafting resolution. We clearly not at 10:03 p.m. right now, but we should do this.
Because of our, Robert's Rule of Orders and parliamentary, we got to introduce it before we bring forth the reso. So there's appetite. I hear two things around, the ban, and then obviously we only have maybe one that's not functioning of a newsstand. There's the other, I think the one on 181st is occupied. But if there are ideas that maybe we want to recommend of where charging ports could be an addition. So then next month, let's see if we can circulate just some, articles, bill information, and then brainstorm on some key things. And then we can kind of have some folks volunteer to lead drafting it.
Or you could refer it to a committee.
Or that I brought it up here because it crosses like 4 or 5 different committees and they've been bringing it forth. I thought maybe it could come from the exec.
Either way,
if somebody wants to own it, I'm all good.
oh, this group is perfectly competent doing it too.
Okay, cool. So we'll do it as from the exec for next month. All right. Is there any old business? Even though I skipped it. All right. Is there?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Daryl. Is there a second?
I will
Great
second
meeting,
that
Madam
motion.
Chair. Great
All
meeting.
right. Good evening,
Second.
everyone.
Great
Thank
meeting.
you.
Good night.
Have a great
Bye.
night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Wow.